our regional executive director, who's my boss, and our associate executive director, they don't work together. They know.
That you got to get rid of?
How many great board members that will.
Oh, yeah.
You're already where I know everybody is like over learning curve already. Yeah. This isn't funny. Just come on. You know everybody already. It's like,
I didn't, but I can't.
but I want to know everybody.
I know everything and everybody. I think it'll happen. At break, I'll run down there.
I don't understand people that want to like I don't know, I guess I've just like grown up around, been around to it, and I'm just like,
We'll just say thanks again.
so I just, so I understand people part. Oh, absolutely, relaxing than mine, I'm sure, but
Yeah, part of our network.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah, everybody waits.
Last clap.
Sales by the team.
There's that laughing. No, but
We said last week.
Exactly. And that's part of it. It's so crazy because today we're talking about the asking, and part of it is just you have to be affirmative and be like, you walk in knowing that they're gonna say yes.
No, but I can imagine.
So I was like, let's go take anything. So now I'm like, okay, I've got
Oh, that was I am too.
Okay, so here's the one fact
Yes. Okay.
Tapped into it. That's something I need.
No, I have no parents I mean, she's really neat.
Right.
I got 6. I'm just gonna give it
They were like, who is this?
You'll get some hot water.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, like, it's really
that's what I think the biggest thing. The biggest
I know there were several in the room.
The area of responsibility. I would have been there.
I wonder if they would
Oh, yeah. The guy at the presentation. Yeah, good job.
So I was ready to thank
Do
So they had to make it where it's viable.
So yeah, early breakfast. I haven't practiced it. Got it? And I'll probably go scroll through it tomorrow. Yeah.
I just, we're getting ready for a gala.
Sorry, I haven't had a chance to join here. That's okay.
There's all this stuff going on.
What I told Sal is what I like to do is really look at
Yeah, our program is uniquely positioned here because The other ones are more STEM. Now on this side, no, they do more of
I think it sounds great.
Good morning, how are you ladies? Very good. Good, thank you.
all very good.
Morning, everybody.
How you doing?
On this sleepy, rainy morning. I feel like I need to like do some jumping jacks or something to like wake up my brain and everything. Once Sal's done texting, we'll get started. Nice call out there. Yeah. Hey, that's the jumping jacks, right? That's one way to start jabbing already.
There you go.
Coming up again.
Gets used to it by now. So session 7, pretty much today, you know, wrapping up the cause selling cycle with talking about the ask and, you know, after the ask, the stewardship with the donors, and then a little bit about just the major gifts and the similarities between that process and the cause selling cycle. But as we're going through working with Bowtie Kids, and you know, as we've been talking to you guys about the fundraising strategic plan and all of the elements there, you know, it's been very helpful for us to identify tools to help that organization, and then also want to pass on to you guys, so as when you're doing your plans, things to think about as you're moving forward. So I'll let Sal talk a little bit about. I'm horrible with connecting words to PowerPoint, so forgive me. I'm like, oh yes, I just said all that. All right, let me pull up the Excel sheet for you. So we have another famous Sal chart
Okay.
to help us organize all of our processes and
All the other stuff.
yeah. Yeah, is that the one you want?
No, that's fine, yeah, that's
That's all
fine.
I got.
Yeah. Yeah, so what I want to do with this chart here, both Megan and I and some other folks here, Barbara and some other folks, we talk about things that are supposed to be integrated. And many organizations, large organizations, functions seem to work as silos. And so there are functions that are direct, there are functions in an organization that provide direct support to a particular activity. And then there are those that provide the support. And so what I want to do with this chart here is actually, and this is hypothetical, only because I did this before I sent it off to Karen and Tracy of Bowtie Kids. And so what I do, or what I did, is that I looked at their committee structure based on the work that Desiree has done on their strategic plan, our conversations with Bowtie Kids, and then also part of my background. And I said to myself, Sal, I did.
I like that.
Then I said yes.
So, yeah, and so everything that we talked about, right, the fundraising, the programs, and the impact and the outcomes, all of that should be, you should look at it in a holistic manner, right? Because everything's going to feed, everything's interrelated. And so because everything's interrelated, and you're looking at committees, and you have your own board, and your own boards have different, you have board members that you selected them because of this particular expertise. Right? That expertise should then channel into the organization. Right? If you have board members that don't contribute to the organization, why have them? Right? And so they bring particular expertise. Those committees that you have should provide direct service or support service to your functions as an organization, to the fundraising, to the programs, to the outcomes. And so this chart here, that's what I did. So you can't really see there are diamonds and circles, but you can use whatever things you guys want. I've had the diamonds as the primary responsibility. For example, you have Bowtie Kids has finance and development, right? They're involved with the grants. They should be involved with the corporate and individual donations. So that's a direct, they have direct tactics, direct responsibilities for those particular functions, right? The fundraising. Then they supply indirect support for the programs because if that committee is not raising sufficient amount of revenue, you can't provide those programs. Right? And they're not directly responsible for the programs because you have the program and services committee that actually does the programs. So there's a support function for that. But they all should be involved in looking at the organizational outcomes. Right? Because without the finance committee and without the other committees, you really don't know what impact it's going to have on the organization. Right? They should all collect data to indicate that you're achieving your outcomes. Right? So, in accounting and the finance, there's this thing called horizontal analysis and vertical analysis. So if you look at this horizontally, you'll see where the committees have support and direct functions across the columns, right? Then you can have the vertical analysis, like for example, corporate donations, and you see who has direct impact to that and which then provides the support. And this is a good way of understanding the interrelationships between the committees, understanding the interrelationship within the organization, right? And it also shows where there's gaps. So if you have a gap in there, then you should probably look at the organization to find out whether or not there's a touch point or an integration point between the different functions and the activities. So when you start developing your strategic strategy for fundraising, you need to see how all of that's going to interplay with all the other parts of the organization, right? Because you're raising funds primarily to do what? Serve your client, right? And so in serving your client, you should also do this part of the assessment. Are you actually achieving what you say you're going to achieve? That component back over here, the impact and outcomes, is probably one of the weakest components in most organizations, in government and the private sector, right, and nonprofits. And this is the part that needs to be sort of bolstered, right? Because this is what's going to sell this course is about selling the cause, right? This is important because it helps you to do what? Sell your cause, right? Some organizations do that extremely well, but it also shows that you need all these different components of the organization to help you do that. Right? If you don't have a good marketing section in your organization, that's a weakness. So how are they going to help you to sell your cause if you have a very poor marketing PR section? You should also have a very good, strong component of the organization because those are the ones that actually really deliver the services. The folks that are on that committee should have the expertise to do the assessment. I mentioned things that are meetings that I go to, and one of the things that I always ask is, how are you assessing this? Well, we haven't thought about that yet. Well, that's not good because you're rolling out a program. You should know what its impact is going to be. Right? For this FRA, the Fundraising Academy, there are certain outcomes that we expect. Right? One is that you're going to be able to do this sort of stuff. This is going to help you in your organization. Right? When you do the pitch, right, the outcome of that should be that you should have a very succinct pitch so that you're going to compel somebody to do what? To give to you. Right? Either from the corporate standpoint, or from an individual standpoint, or from events and fundraising events that you're going to have. So that's our particular outcome, right? To give you guys the skills that you need in order to succeed.
And just to see how this fits in holistically, so when you're doing, I don't know, back several sessions ago when we talked about when you were generating your organizational goals and establishing those assessments, so this particular, this new sheet fits in there. So you know, if you think about your organizational goals and then what those strategies or tactics are to achieve those goals, and then again the priority task sheet to kind of help and assign who's doing that sort of thing. But then you get in deeper just to make sure that you are developing a holistic approach to your solutions. You know, so that, you know, if you have these separate committees or, and this is just, you know, what one organization has, yours might be different, structured differently. But if you have these different committees or working groups on your board, then you want to ensure that if, for example, tactic one is to, you know, it could be focused on fundraising, it could be focused on a specific program or an event, and to ensure that each area of your board or working group or working committee is integrated into that tactic in the best way possible. So again, as Sal was saying, like if you're missing something on the marketing or PR side or the legal or strategy side, it's just helping you think holistically so that again, you're not also overburdening one area of your board or one individual of your board, and you can spread that out.
Yes. That's the
Make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Questions? So this is pretty much wrapping up the conversation on the strategic planning front. So any of you guys that are going through this right now, or any questions that you have, or additional things that maybe we didn't talk about that you think that we should when it comes to the strategic planning? Thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
So, my brain doesn't work this way.
Yeah.
And so, I guess I'm curious if you're part of an established organization, if you would implement a lot of this for each program you have or something every single time, or if you would just use this as a guide to make sure that you're on the right track with what you're planning as part of your...
Yeah. Well, my standpoint is both. And I say both because if you have a large program, then there's more interaction with the organization in that program, right? And so if you're, my buddy Jake isn't here from My Life, My Power, but they're developing programs. Those programs can't operate in isolation. So those programs need to be funded through the funds, obviously, through corporate donations individually. So you need those individuals involved in that program in order to understand what the cost is, how much is it going to cost to do the, essentially how much is that program is going to cost, right? But also, remember, that program is also, to some extent, I don't want to use the word siphoning, but you have a pot of money, and that program consumes the next percent of that pot. You have another program over here. Remember, there's an interrelationship between those two because you're drawing from the same pot of money, and so you need those individuals involved as to how rapid is it going to grow, where do you want to grow, how much additional resources do you need, but then also you also need the marketing people involved, because then you have to market those programs to your external stakeholders or those individuals you want to attract to donate to you. So it's both looking at it both programmatically at the micro level, but also how it rolls up into the overall organization. Let me give you a very good example. I mentioned it briefly. I was in a consulting engagement with Yale University. And I mentioned that their endowment dropped by 50%, from $37 billion to $16 billion, $15 billion. And what the business school was doing, what the law school was doing, I don't remember if they have a law school or not, they were consuming X amount of money from their general fund. When we started looking at where to start doing the finance restructuring, we had to take into account all the programs that are at Yale University. You had to find out what were the touch points with finance, what were the touch points with budgeting, what were the touch points with student advising and all that. Because what you don't want to do is start messing around, growing or contracting the service without understanding what the implications are going to be at the end of the day, because you're going to one, mess up the organization more than it's really messed up. Second, remember, it's there to educate students, and so you don't want to shortchange any particular segment within that university. Similarly, in an organization like a nonprofit, you have a similar situation. If you have a program that's expanding, remember, you have to see how all of this relates to it, and then how that program also has indirect effects on another program. And so you look at it both micro level, but also in terms of the overall organization. So it's both. If you have a smaller organization, you obviously can't do this. If you have a large organization, this becomes more imperative.
And doing this at some point helps, for example, if you can see where could possibly be synergies between your working groups, and maybe you're spread too thin and you can combine things and just be more efficient. So every organization is going to be different. I think, at a minimum, you just want to start thinking this way of your goals, your tactics, what your intended outcome is, and then how you're going to assess it and what's successful to you. And so that you can kind of make sure that you're having that feedback loop.
Yeah, let me add to what Megan said too. If you're thinking of expanding your organization, like some of you are planning to do, then going through this exercise is going to be very helpful. Because then you're going to show, okay, this department needs to be involved doing this department is going to be involved doing this, and so then you understand how all of this sort of works together, particularly if you're going to expand.
Sorry, where do we find this to look at on our laptops right now?
It's not.
It's not.
Yeah, I need to put it up there, sorry
Oh, okay,
guys.
sorry. Thank you.
I just need to, I have it on my thing, I just need to upload it into Canvas. Yeah.
Little baby.
Yeah, I had to shrink it to fit on one page.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I know this is like, for example's sake, but that you have legal and strategy and then finance and development. Wouldn't strategy and development be a more, like,
Yes.
logical?
Well,
I
yeah.
didn't know if you were just like, this is like an example, because, I mean, we don't even have that many employees, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking, wouldn't strategy and development be a department, and then like legal and finance? Because, I mean, like, because I have access to all my like data, budgets and things like that, so I don't ever work with finance in regards to like a setup like this.
Yeah. I mean, there's multiple ways of organizing an organization. We push strategy on the legal because of the things such as, they want to get into acquiring property. Finance people aren't necessarily involved with all the contracts and all that other stuff. There's other strategies that have legal implications, and so that's why we put it there.
I see.
But then there's the financial strategy that there's other. I guess the word strategy is you should probably leave another word.
Finance and development
Yeah.
to me does go hand in hand, because one is the outreach of the finance. So, they need to have that synergy together, and if you have a small group, then you do need to find ways that they do kind of synergize. But every organization is going to be different. Whatever you're asking one working group might be completely different than what another organization would.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, because I confront this issue quite a bit. I used to, not anymore, when I was doing the consulting stuff. And you guys remember, about 6 months ago, or maybe about a year and a half ago, there was this big scandal at University of South Florida, whatever it's called, University of Central Florida, where $60-some million of state money was used to build a building, which was a no-no because they misappropriated state funds. And so there was people that were fired. The president resigned, the chair of the board had to resign, and the CFO was thrown out. And so when I was involved with that project, we actually started looking as to what type of organizational structure was going to happen after that scandal. And so we were thinking, was it going to be a centralized administration? Was it going to be sort of a hybrid? And so we started looking at the functions, as you said, well, does this function belong there? Does that function belong there? And for them, because they had a major reorg, they're thinking of, okay, what's the best way to safeguard resources, financial resources, and then what's the best way to organize all the functions reporting to the new president, and to the board. And so there are those discussions as to, do we have how far down do we want this to go, or do we want to roll it up? And again, that's a decision that needs to be done at the executive level. Obviously, if there are synergies that can be made when you consolidate, then you want to do that. But you also have to make sure that when you consolidate, you restructure all the responsibilities and activities of the new unit that's going to be created. In most cases, what happens is that a very clear example of that was when Tom Ridge was, after 9/11, they created the TSA and then all that other stuff that they did. Not once have they thought about restructuring everything. They just lump them together and say, here you go. That's a bad way of doing things. So when you start restructuring stuff, you look at the responsibilities that each unit does. How are you going to merge it? What new responsibilities are they going to have? And then how is that going to then cascade throughout the organization? So it's a major undertaking, but it has to be done. Otherwise, you're going to mess up that organization more than it is, right? And that happens quite a bit because I work for those organizations, or I consulted with those organizations. You have to, when you do this, you have to be very methodical, very thoughtful on how you're going to do it. In addition to that, you always have to think about how am I going to assess it. And that's the last question that's ever asked. How am I going to assess it? Because if you consolidate, you're thinking that you're going to achieve particular outcomes. Are those outcomes going to be achieved, yes or no? You have to collect that data from the beginning. Or think about what data you need in order to make sure that that consolidation or that growth is actually going to achieve what it's going to achieve. Right? Megan and I have those discussions frequently. What is it that we're going to achieve? How are we going to collect the data? What data is there that we don't need to replicate? What new data do we have? And if we don't have it, then how are we going to get it? Same thing with the nonprofits and other organizations that I worked at. Again, think of it this. Every action that you make is going to have a consequence. It's either going to be good or it's going to be bad. In order to find out if it's good or bad, you have to collect that data. Because ultimately, you're affecting the people that you serve. That's why, I created this thing, but this is fine, but this is probably one of the most important functions that isn't done. And you have to see how all these different, how your functions, how your units, how your committees all impact the outcome. Because this is what's going to help you sell your organization, sell your service. Right? You're not going to go and say, well, I raised $20 million, and they're going to say, well, fine, why do you need my money? But if you say we're helping X amount of clients, and this is what they're achieving, then you're going to say, wow, that's a good cause for me to deliver.
Yeah,
Right?
this is the why. This
Yes.
is your why, your organization why, and your donor's why.
And so you have to find out how each function, your board members, each unit within your organization gets to that why. Why are we doing this? Why do I need your help? Right? It's all about why.
So it should be up there for you.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions on the plan? Okay. All right. Now on to how do we make the ask and how do we do this with confidence? So we're going to talk about learning to love the ask. I think we all have a different relationship with that process and how comfortable we are with it. And just review closing strategies and understand reasons for failure to the close. And learn to recognize signals that the donor is ready. Learn ways to deal with rejection. So we want to watch this quick interview. It's nothing personal. Yes. It's not you, it's me.
Hi, I'm Amy Eisenstein. Welcome to Ask the Fundraising Expert. Today I'm so excited to have Seth Godin here with me, a well-known author, speaker, founder of multiple companies, and all-around marketing expert. Welcome, Seth. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to know you.
Great. Well, let's get started talking about storytelling and nonprofits, and how can storytelling help nonprofits spread their word?
Well, let's understand that when someone donates money to a charity, they're buying something. They're hiring that charity to solve a problem for them. The question we need to understand is, what are they buying? Too often we get hung up on the problem to be solved, the charts and the graphs and the urgency. Right? That, no, this time it's urgent. That's not what anyone buys, ever. And when we talk about what we've done, when we talk about the charity we're supporting, what do we say? These come down to the story. And the story is, does it resonate with me? Does it resonate with the person I believe I am and my place in society? A short way of saying it is this. People like us do things like this. And every successful charity is successful at the fundraising end because they have figured out how to be part of the culture, not all of the culture, a section of the culture, where people proudly say, of course I support them, because people like us do things like this. And the mistake that we make, because our cause is so good, is that we skip all that and try to get to the facts. Guess what? No one looks at the facts when they buy a chocolate bar, they don't look at the facts when they buy a car, and they don't look at the facts when they make a donation.
Yeah, what a great way of putting it, succinct as possible and powerful. So if you were in front of a nonprofit board, what's one piece of advice that you would give them?
I think the most important thing that board members have to understand is that we invented nonprofits for a reason. And the reason is it's okay to fail. That if it had to work, then you would be a for-profit company that had to make its dividends. But the entire reason we have nonprofits is we don't know how to solve this problem. We don't know how to educate kids. We don't know how to make more entrepreneurs in Nairobi. We don't know how to solve this health problem. If we knew, we would have solved it already. You're here because we want you to be scientists, to explore, to apply a series of steps to a problem until the problem goes away. And too often, nonprofits, once they get past 5 people, become defenders of the nonprofit, as opposed to eager scientists willing to figure out yet another way the problem can't be solved as we work our way to the way it can be solved. So creating tension is actually a good thing. The tension of this might not work. The tension of you can't work here anymore because your posture doesn't match our posture. The tension of making a donor uncomfortable with what you're about to do next. Because there are no comfortable problems left to be solved. All we're left with are the uncomfortable ones.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think nonprofits are often fearful of taking risks. They're afraid of taking risks because they think their donors might not be happy if they fail. So how do we get board members and nonprofits in general to feel more comfortable taking those risks and, of course, explaining those risks to the donors?
Well, you know, one of the memes that every nonprofit needs to be aware of is the National Lampoon cover from the 1970s that said, buy this magazine or we'll shoot this dog. And the reason that it's such a powerful cover, besides the fact that it's funny, is the certainty involved. Don't buy the magazine and kill the dog. Buy the magazine, the dog goes free. And nonprofits have gotten sucked into an easy trope, which is give us money, we'll solve the problem. Switch your light bulbs, global warming will go away. That we've hooked one thing to the other for sure. And it's interesting the way we sidestep it. So we don't have fundraisers to cure breast cancer anymore. We have breast cancer awareness, as if awareness is the problem, right?
Yeah.
So we use all these weasel words instead of saying, there's a problem over there. Do not avert your eyes. People like us look at this problem. And then people like us sign up, enroll to go down a pathway to solving it. Then when we can say to our donors, this is difficult, this isn't going to happen tomorrow, but we will do it together, we have a credit card to go fail. But if we say to people, clock's ticking, we're going to solve this problem in an hour, well then of course you're stressed, because you just promised people that there was no risk. When in fact, there is no risk to donating. There is a risk to committing to solving it by a given day. We can't do that except for the endless emergency of poverty, which is why there's way too much focus on give us a bag of rice so this kid won't die today, they'll die tomorrow. That's a dead end. We know that. So what we've become as we get more sophisticated at this are people who are willing to do the hard work of telling a donor the truth about where we're going to go next, because the best stories are true stories.
That is such a good reminder for all board members and fundraisers to take the long view and to be as honest as they can, obviously, with all of their donors. Good, let's change topics for a minute and talk about what would you say to millennials or the new fundraisers entering the profession or the nonprofit sector? What advice would you have to young people who want to join the nonprofit ranks?
Well, here's the good news. If you can raise money, you're never going to have trouble getting a job.
That's true.
More than anything I can think of, indoor labor, more than any indoor job I can think of, people who can raise money will never need to worry about a job. So the question is, how do you raise money? Are you just dialing for dollars from a list of strangers? Are you putting in mail to people who don't want to get it, spamming the world? Because if you do that, you're an interchangeable, replaceable cog. That's not the way you become a great fundraiser. The way great fundraising is done is by connecting the disconnected, by organizing tribes of people who want to hear from each other, and you're at the center of it. When you can deliver anticipated, personal, and relevant messages to people who want to get them, when you are the drum major who is keeping the people in sync, not all people, just your people, raising money isn't a hassle, it's a privilege for these people to give you money. Because here's the big home run to remember. Anytime someone gives you $50, they are only doing it because they're getting $75 worth of value out of giving you $50. Because if it wasn't, they wouldn't do it.
That's right.
So when you think about it that way, you realize that what you're doing is you're having a 50% off sale. Now when you show up and say, you can feel good for $50, they're saying, this is great, because I just got $75 worth of value. And when you think of it that way, how dare you not reach out?
That's right. It's such a good way of putting it. I always like to say that fundraising isn't about arm twisting. It's not about begging. It's about finding people who believe in the same cause as you do to invest in your community and a cause.
Exactly.
Last question. You're here because you are going to be the keynote at the AFP International Conference. So I was wondering if you would give us one tip or highlight from your speech that's coming up in a few hours.
I guess I would remind people that we have all become weird. That the normal distribution of the big bulge in the middle of the people who give to the United Way and the Boy Scouts, that mass stuff for mass audiences doesn't work for hotels, it doesn't work for political candidates, and it doesn't work for fundraising anymore. That the curve is melting, that people given a choice take a choice. That on iTunes or Netflix or anywhere they get a choice, they take a choice. And so making average stuff for average people, doing an average gala for average people, making an average pitch to average people, isn't going to scale anymore. You got to find the edge cases, the people who care, the people who through their actions have already indicated this is something they're dying to get involved in. Those people are worth all of our time. Let the average people deal with someone else.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the work you do.
All right, thank you.
So what did you guys take away from that? Don't be average. Well, right? Get weird.
I kind of thought something was
Yeah, it's
interesting.
not a risk to ask. It's a risk not to ask.
Yeah. He mentioned that people don't really support, so this has been an ongoing thing when it comes to individual donors and really bolstering that entity of giving. And when you look at the political landscape, you know, I think we all get the spam messages or the multiple emails, give me $5 is gonna do this for me, you know. But when you look at the financial outcome of that, people are donating to that. So I would really want to contest what his comment was at the end there, when people don't support like those mass pushes. When you see things like that, it's like there is some interest somewhere.
I don't think he necessarily meant mass pushes other than maybe the messaging is creative. Like whatever they're putting out there is resonating in a new way. I think it's just saying, don't rest on your laurels like with those big organizations and just doing the same old, but challenging yourself and challenging your processes to reach out in a different way. It's kind of how I
It's more
took
the
that.
message opposed to the message.
It's the medium or something unique about it, like some sort of core differentiator or something that's there that's going to like, wow, you know.
I think a great takeaway for me was we talked about it somewhat, you know, the value of the giving. So, you know, really letting people know that even if they give an amount of $50, the bigger is in the value of it. What it's going to do, how it's going to spread, how it's going to change, whatever it is you're doing. And the second point that he talked about was the nonprofit world and dealing with now have switched it from a solve an issue to an awareness of something. And when he said that, I was reminded about, well, we have this particular awareness program, we have the cancer awareness, we have the this awareness, the that awareness, and it's true, so they're asking you to give just to the awareness to make people knowledgeable, not removing the situation.
Yeah, there was a part there that I was like, whoa, that resonated. It was about that, but it's that feeling of challenging people to be risk takers. You know, jump on board with me to try to do this. Like, you're not saying that, hey, we know how to do this and we're experts, and so if, you know, give us your money. But it's like, hey, work with us to try to fix this. It's exciting. We can be part of this process.
Yeah, that's how I ended up here. Seriously, one of the, you know, if you're going to sell something, you have to sell an idea of that you're going to make an impact. And our department is going through transition because people have left. But for me, like starting the nonprofit, being involved in the Masters of Science in Philanthropy and Nonprofit Management, to me that's something that I don't have the opportunity to do that many times, to build a new program. Megan and I are working on that diligently, but we're also trying to figure out a way to make our department distinctive from the other universities. What is it about our department, what is it about our degrees that's going to distinguish us from University of Miami, from Florida State University, from University of Florida? So we're trying to do that. The things that we're discussing in this class are things that we're applying, because we do have to take a risk, right? There's a risk that, you know, I come here, I talk to you guys, there's a risk that I'm going to make a fool of myself, right? There's a risk that I take, there's a risk that I took leaving New York to come here. But it's a good risk in the sense that I'm investing not just in me, but I'm investing in people like you, right? Nonprofits have to take that risk, because you know, a lot of stuff that I've done in my professional life, I failed a lot, right? Every article that I sent out, I'm thinking, okay, if it gets accepted, I'm happy. If it gets rejected, I get really annoyed, right? Because I'm thinking this is the best darn work I've ever done, right? I take a risk when I do that. But nonprofits have to take that risk. I mean, one thing that I admire about Megan is that she moved from Texas to come to here, right? She took a risk. After working at UT for 17 years or so, came here to build something, right? You guys working nonprofits have to do the same thing. What are we going to build? What risk are we going to take? And yes, do we want to be average? I'm not an average guy, as you can tell. And I say that not arrogantly, but there's risks that I took in every organization that I worked at. There's risks that I took personally, right? Organizations need to take that risk, especially nonprofits, right? There's a risk, yes, there's a risk of asking people for money, right? There's a risk that you're going to take and implement in a new program. Is it going to be successful or not, right? There's a risk that you take, you know, getting in your car, coming here, right? Organizations need to look at that. Okay, what is it that we're doing? How are we going to improve? And what risks are there that we can address and sort of mitigate?
And it's amazing how just changing the frame, you know, framing it in a different way, whether it's your own perspective or the way that it's presented to the donor, how much it just changes everything that you're doing. You know, yeah, you know, I've got to stand up here in front of fundraising professionals and try to, you know, share something that you guys don't already know. You know, and I could take this stance of you know, I know this stuff, or, you know, no, I'm going to be humble and stand in front of you, and it's going to be a community of learning. And then that levels the playing field a little bit for me and for you guys, and we're working together. So it's just this change in perception that, you know, we can do to make and engage in a more, you know, authentic way.
Also to your question of what I saw in it right away quick was the fact that connecting the disconnected. Mm-hmm. Connecting the disconnected.
I got chills on that.
Right. That part right there was like, you may have been established for a long time, but you're in the middle.
Yeah.
And you're not connecting. And then his other comment that really just blared out was, not all people you're worried about, just your people.
Yeah.
And your message better touch your people and get them back connected. Mm-hmm. If you're not getting your people back connected, then you're missing the whole mark.
The part that concerned me is in the beginning of the conversation, he was saying something that theoretically makes sense, but in reality doesn't. And that is that nonprofits should be sort of the R&D of society. We should be making mistakes. But the last time, I've never seen a grant that you can write, well, I've failed at this 500 times. Right. So if you give me this grant, I'm sure the next time it's going to succeed. Right. Or you go to a funder and say, yep, we haven't solved the problem yet, but if we get your donation, I'm sure this next time we're going to solve it. So theoretically, yeah, we should be the R&D, but in reality, we don't have that latitude. Whereas in the business world, they do.
Yeah, but you know what? I think, you know, when you're saying that, and I totally agree, but I think it's because we haven't established our mission that way. We haven't put in our mission and our vision that we are an incubator. Mm-hmm. We are trying to be a social solution, you know. but no, we're saying we are going to do these things. But, you know, as he was talking, I was like, it's just that shift in saying that we are working towards this. And I think in grants and stuff like that, like, you can frame things in a way, you know, you don't go, we failed it. I mean, you know, you word it in a way that says, you know, we're working towards this, and this is super exciting because we've achieved X, Y, Z, and if we get this, man, we can get all the way here.
Well, to speak into what you're saying, sir, it's like, so at Pay Center, one of the values is like growth and change, and we are very into risk taking. And one of the things that we realized a few years ago is we were missing the mark with certain things, so we started to collaborate, and we started to see, we built what's something called the Girls Leadership Council, that other organizations work with us on finding out how are we not serving these girls? It's not just us serving these girls. Same in this room, most of us have missions that cross over and connect, and so that's an opportunity for literally those of us in this room and beyond, is to say, fine, so I'm not solving the problem by myself, but I'm not alone, so who do I need to connect with to get people in the room? And there's nothing wrong with sharing that also out, because again, the donors, they're not just my donors, they're not just your donors, they're interested in both of us because we both serve kids, right? And so donors want to see that we're all working together to solve the problem. So to me, it's not about, well, let's just keep it separate. Let's say, okay, well, we've got some work to do, but we're going to do it together. That's a very good point.
Well, the way I heard that was, if I present to an individual donor, a major donor, prospect or donor, that we're taking this risk to solve this problem. There is a problem that exists. Seniors are lonely and depressed and not able to stay in their own home. And if I bring the donor into, this is the risk, but you can be a part of helping solve this problem with us, and we're going to try it in this way, or we're going to take this step toward growth, and we're not really sure what that's going to look like, but we want you to be a part of it. Maybe it helps to separate us out from other organizations, and in the donor's mind makes it more of an interesting
endeavor,
buy-in, right? Something that gives them an opportunity to do something different than what everybody else is asking.
I think that also lays the foundation for stewardship later and to keeping that donor.
One other point that when they first got started, he raised the question, what are they buying? What are they buying? What are you offering? And it goes back to what was just the comment that was just said, why should I go with you and not go with you? Because that's also what's happening now. They're not always just giving you the same organization. They're fine-tuning where they want to be because they want to see what your outcomes have been. How effective has your program services been? And one of the things that I wanted to comment too was they said they're not buying urgency. So organizations who are writing the grants and need the money now, it's not going to work. Because grants, the whole RFP is a process. And so when we were looking at trying to see what will it take to be sustainable, to make the effect, to make the awareness, to make the change, to make the impact. That's all to me in the planning of whatever program services you decided to do, whether stewardship or whatever it is, because stewardship or asking asking someone to give is helping organizations to get more toward unrestricted funding, because when you get into grants, it's definitely restricted funding. And so you want the donors to give from an unrestricted standpoint because it will cover the cost of what some of the programs are not going to do. So, if you've got a program that requires the children to be involved, but you can't feed them because there are some grants that they will not provide food. The unrestricted dollars will be the story to tell about why we need this, why we need you to give, so we can feed the young people, so they can pay attention to whatever is being taught or provided.
Yeah. Thank you. Any comments? So the most important factor in successfully closing is your attitude. So always be closing. His whole comment of people like us do things like this. I mean, you're connecting your community right there, because at the core of all of us, we want to belong. So when you have that sort of affirmative and positive language, you don't want to, the person's going to jump on board instead of buck the system, So, I mean, just tell me a little bit how everybody kind of, like what your feel is about the ask. How comfortable are you with it? Anybody?
If we want to keep a job, we better ask.
No, no. Does anybody get uncertain about like, oh, when do I do it? Or it feels weird or?
I just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
I think based on like the information that I read in the textbook and just going through the PowerPoints, building strong relationships definitely help with the ask for me personally. So I've learned the difference that there is a huge difference, disparity between building, networking and building relationships. Most people attend events to network. However, when you build strong relationships and you actually keep up with those relationships, asking, it's much more feasible than just meeting someone, taking their card, calling them later, oh, by the way, I need $10,000.
Yeah.
So it's so much easier when you have that relationship, and it's definitely rooted in reciprocity, but more so in connectivity.
Great. Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's all about the relationship, and as long as the fundraiser cultivates the relationship in the right way, then the ask won't come as a surprise, the amount will be appropriate, where it's not, oh yeah, sure, that's gonna, here's $100,000, whatever, and it's not, oh no, wait, that's way too much. It's, as long as the relationship is strategically guided in the right direction, then the donor or the donor prospect won't be surprised about the ask, and it won't be uncomfortable. It'll be natural progression.
Yeah, and one thing they point out in this whole cost selling format is that you're getting affirmatives along the way. So you have them saying yes to the whole process, you know, meeting with you. Do they believe in your cause, or does that make sense? You know, all these things that you're doing. So by the time that you get to the point where you're asking for the gift, you know, they're used to that sort of engagement with you.
I'm just wondering, what's striking me is when you ask in grants versus when you ask individual, it's a very different thing. The relationship in grants is not very
It's impersonal.
Totally impersonal, and it's basically I'm doing great stuff and getting money. I mean, that's the basis of a grant. Whereas when you have,
No, she's like,
well, I hear, but I'm talking, and yes, you can find grantors who will talk to you, and you can have a relationship. But by and large, you're in a contest, and it's almost a beauty contest. Versus when you're dealing with an individual, you've actually established a personal relationship. And I think it's easier, if you will, to ask in a personal relationship than it is in a very impersonal relationship, very formal relationship. My opinion. You could say no.
yeah. Well, and I agree, but I'm trying to find that statistic. What was, and it's in here somewhere, and so if I get the percentage wrong, forgive me, but it's a pretty high percentage, like 68% of the giving landscape is from individual donors. So that is the majority of what you're going to be doing anyway. Yes, Jamie?
Sorry, just quick response to that. Grantors aren't machines, they're people too. And so you still have to cultivate those relationships with the individuals behind the foundation. And it could be where, like, I work very closely with the Miami Foundation, and for every RFP they have, they say, okay, what is it that the volunteers will be looking for? Why did we didn't receive funding last year, or what are they looking for? And what are programs that you can really get behind and advocate for us on our end? And so, yes, there are volunteer reviewers, the same with United Ways and a lot of other foundations, or it's a board of directors where maybe you're working with the executive director, but the board is the ultimate decision maker. But getting that point of contact to be the advocate for the organization is critical.
And sometimes that might be the difficult part, is finding that point of contact.
Well, I agree with you. It's not black and white, it's shades of gray.
Right.
So, yes, there are relationships
Yeah,
with
okay.
grantors. But it's easier, if you will, more straightforward to have a relationship with an individual. There isn't the process, if you will, that's getting in the way. Yeah, you can talk.
No, because it was just like, going back to the ads question that you were saying, I have my little poll because 90% of my friends are involved with a charity because they connected to an ad that connected to their need of donating into something that they believe in. So I'm in the generation that we travel a lot, we do a lot by the phone, we don't have time sometimes to go and network within the community. I've been on both sides of the end. I've been the donor and I've been the creator or the starter of a nonprofit. So before I started my own nonprofit, was there like our project, this is how I donated. Sometimes I was just sitting in an airport and I saw an ad that touched my heart and I said, oh my God, I want to be part of it. I wrote down, you know, I donated right away, but then I wrote down and I have a long-term relationship with these people. So it's not that one kind of excludes the other. I believe that all of us learn and connect differently. And the way that you are aware that other people are actually wanting to solve the same problem like you put it, like how are we gonna solve this, then makes it easier when you're busy like that, just when you have like a very effective ad. I'm not saying that you're gonna be badgering people with this, but I believe that if that's the perfect way to find people around you that believe in the same thing that you do.
I think I totally agree, and I think that's, why they touch on all these different strategies, and in that needs discovery portion where you're really getting to know your donor and what works for them. Some folks might just want, a quarterly email about like where their money's going and how the organization's doing, and they want it to stay kind of impersonal, but that works for them. Others, they want you to call every day and wake them up in the morning and do all that stuff so that they feel important and special. So it's all going to range, how you engage, and it's being that thoughtful and that present in your interactions so that you can understand what that needs to be instead of a one-size-fits-all. Right, so this is a sample here, and it's written in your worksheet too, so if you can't read what's up here. Anybody want to read this out loud, and then we can talk about what's wrong with it? Yes, ma'am. Please.
Well, Dr. Bigley, that's all I have to say. That's all I have to tell you. Is there anything else you would like to ask me? No? Okay. I guess I'll call you again in a few weeks. Have a good day. I enjoy talking with you.
So what was wrong here? Go ahead. Exactly. You can do this. You find yourself doing this every week, and then at what point do you decide? Oh, now in the conversation, it sounds like I should make this ask. Your touch points need to be purposeful. Yeah, Shamika.
Oh, so I think with the ask, what I find is, just from a rhetorical perspective, I think the effectiveness of one's communication, like the choice of verbiage, it's important, right? So it's one, like the other day, somebody sent a letter to me and I read it, but some words are just so harsh. It's not that it's intended that way, but it can be interpreted that way. And sometimes, as you read, it's just, it's no finesse to it. So I find that, and I think that has a direct correlation to building relationships, because when you are comfortable with the individual that you are meeting and asking, your verbiage is much different, but it's more persuasive, I guess, if it makes sense. Yeah, so.
I liked, I think it was in the video where they were talking about asking questions that you'll get affirmation. Should they get used to saying yes from you? And it sounds like she did some talking and didn't do any asking. In fact, her question to him is no. And so it's just all very negative.
Yeah. And I think that's a very good point, and it touches on it a little bit too, is using words like no or don't. I mean, that's implanted, in our brains, and you want to make sure that your word choice are positive and affirmative, and it gets, it has that air of positivity around it, so that you're not implanting something subliminally, so they say no to you later. Okay. Who wants to read this one? What's right in this one? Someone read it out loud. Thank you.
Mr. Lopez, we have agreed on the benefits that our organization provides to the local community, which is why I would like you to consider a gift of $100,000 today to help fund the new initiative we have discussed.
Clear, to the point, had to ask. Yeah, positive language.
I want to hear Mr. Lopez if he has that kind of.
Yeah, no, me too.
What about the idea of asking for a specific amount as opposed to?
Well, I think this would be a case when you have done all of your needs discovery, you know exactly what is an appropriate amount. And we'll talk a little bit about trying to figure that out later in the presentation. Yes, ma'am.
Like how you basically restated what they discussed. Just like if you was to send an email to our discussion.
Yeah.
Or whatever, just to remind them, we talked about that, like, oh yeah, that thing.
Yeah, remember those other things that you liked that we said?
It's not only we talked about it, we agreed on it.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes, exactly.
That's the word, agreed.
Yes.
And people like us give $100,000 to
Yeah, but so last week, there was a young lady talking about one of her donors. I was yes. One way to get that person to contribute is to do something like this. Right? We talked about this. You said you were going to do it. This is what I'm expecting. Right? Because it's going to help us to do this. As opposed to just somebody saying yes, and they never come through. Right? I do this quite a bit. When I talk to somebody, I generally send an email saying this is what we discussed. Is this correct? Or if not, then please restate what we discussed and so forth. That we have a meeting in our minds, and it does get to this thing here, right? Of how do you ask? How do you affirm that was agreed upon, and then what's going to be the outcome? In this case, is a donation.
So some effective closing strategies that you can, and much like what we did last week, with all those different kind of tools that you can pull out of your toolbox, these are things too, depending on the preference of the donor and what you're getting from your presentation, the feel that you have. So be assumptive, again, having the positive affirmative language, when we do this or when our relationship grows, it's showing, progression and a connection to the organization. And it's, this strategy works well with indecisive donors who tend to be nervous about making big decisions. So asking a series of questions throughout the presentation, again, to build up to that end real yes that you're looking for. Provide the summary benefits that we just talked about, all the things that we have said up to this point that you've agreed with, the things that we're doing for children, our impacts, and getting them behind all of that are especially good when prospects will need to explain their decisions to somebody else. So you're implanting all the benefits of giving to your organization. Ask directly for the gift. Sometimes I'm sure you've all found yourself in a meeting with somebody and you're just like, why is this so easy? I feel like I can just ask now. And sometimes it'll be organic like that, and you can just be direct and ask them specifically what you're needing. And then to ask for a specific amount. Don't ask donors to guess what is an appropriate amount, and don't keep them in the dark about who the money will help and how. Inspire them to make the difference with a particular program. A common mistake that we can make is not asking for enough money. Like, oh man, they were so eager, they just said yes on that, and I could have upped that. So, again, risk taking. Be a risk taker. You've done your homework. Be thoughtful about what you're asking, but make them a little uncomfortable about the amount. You don't want them to be, oh, this is a no big deal. You want them to be invested. And we're all invested when we have a little bit of an uncomfortable amount of something, whether your own personal energy, money, whatever it is. If it's something a little uncomfortable, then we're more attached to it. And the difficult thing for many of us is to remain silent. It is hard. This guy's mastered it, seriously. So, and I think, that tactic of you stay quiet long enough, somebody else will do it. And then I'm that one that's like, well, okay, I guess, you know, and it's like, I should have just waited that extra 30 seconds.
No, well, usually I'm thinking about how am I going to approach something. So, where she goes? Oh no, the way you verbalize something is very important. Because there are certain things that, like for example, Megan had once called me a fast talker. Right? When I hear the word fast talker, I'm thinking, you know, like the president, right? A con man. As opposed to someone.
Look at him airing all our dirty laundry.
No. But as opposed to someone like, you know, when Megan used the word fast talker, it was someone who already had went through the process and ended up in a particular spot, right? And so when when someone is quiet, generally sometimes, you know, someone like me is thinking about, okay, I know what I have to do, how am I going to get involved, how am I going to do it, and so I'm thinking, right? But sometimes there's that is very uncomfortable for those of you who may not know me very well, where I'm very quiet, but it's my brain's already sort of, you know, that little hamster's turning. Okay, how am I going to get involved, right? And am I going to get involved in terms of donating my money? Am I going to get involved in donating time? Am I going to get involved in both things? And so, yeah, when someone's quiet, you sort of have to stay back, not rush it and say, okay, because the person may be thinking, okay, how am I going to, what's the proper amount to give? What can I give? What are the competing nonprofits that I'm going to be engaged with, and so forth? Because there's, you know.
And you don't want to give them an easy out. You know, y'all cultivated this relationship, and it made sense for you to get to this point where you're asking. And so when we start speaking after that, then we're second guessing all of the work that we've already done. And so, you know, it's okay for them to be on the spot. You know, they need to, if they have any sort of objection, that's when that will come up. But if you start guessing, oh, what are they thinking? Or then we have more of an opportunity to step in it and then open up the door to a new problem.
So my question is as to the amount of the ads. Being very, very new to the nonprofit world, one of the things that when you say the 100,000 and make them uncomfortable, which all makes sense, would it be sound strategies to maybe ask for, not push so much on the ask and get them on board, just planning on long-term growing that amount year after year?
I think before you, yes, for sure, but I think you would know that before you got to this point. Right. You would know if this is, what kind of relationship this is going to be.
So instead of pushing on the first time, making that a little more of an easy yes, and with that long term in mind.
And if I'm engaging in a relationship with that donor and I can tell that, you know, they are slow to make decisions, you know, they want to be more nurtured and things, then I would more likely take that approach. You know, but if you have,
makes sense.
yes.
And this would never be in the beginning of a relationship anyway.
Yeah. Unless they are, as we'll talk about, you know, major gifts.
So a little bit of my experience when you have like that soft approach, sometimes they don't know what to give. They're like, okay, I'll give you volunteers. I was like, no, that's not what I want. You just have to like ask. It doesn't necessarily have to be like an amount, but let them know that you do need the money before anything else.
Yeah. So be clear about what your needs are.
They could decide.
But that also goes to going back to knowing what you need, what the agency needs, right? So if you need volunteers, you build a relationship. Actually, you can build a relationship where you're asking for money and volunteers, you know,
and in kind, whatever.
In kind, yes. I wanted to just let Nick mention that there is a study that has been done on the power of silence. There are all kinds of videos out there, and it really helps not only how you deliver your message and allowing that silence to come, but it also helps you and what determines. There's like a bunch, like maybe 21 different captures of the power of silence. Yes. So just look it up. It works. It works even in making job offers. It works when you're doing discipline. It works. It works. Period.
Yeah. I think in any relationship, any engagement. Yeah.
just one more point on the remaining silent. The flip side of it is listening. I had a meeting with a donor this week, and they make a traditional, substantial gift every year. And just in the conversation, he said, well, this year I'm going to change it up. Usually I give you a cash donation, but the market has done so well, this person is compensated from their job, they're compensated in stock. He said the market has done so well, if I cash these stock options in, I'll have to pay capital gains on them. So what I'm going to do is just do a stock transfer, and instead of giving you cash this year, I'm going to give you my donation in stock, and then I can write off the value of it, and it saves me even more. So just by listening, this person educated me. So now I'm going through my list of how many other highly compensated young people who probably get paid through stock options who might be able to do the same thing and not really suffer from them. So being silent and listening to what they're saying also can give you a lot of information, not only about them, but other donors just like them.
And I love that example because it also just affirms the $50 and $75 value.
Yeah,
Yes.
You know, I mean, it is ultimately what's going to be in their best interest.
Yeah.
Did somebody else have a comment? And then if the donor is hesitating, stress the urgency. And this is not something that you would do every time because it can feel manipulative, but if you are, trying to get funding for a specific initiative or program, then it's completely fair and understandable to say, we need this gift for XYZ, but again, it's not something that you'll pull out all the time. Or like the best time to give is when it's needed most, and then, go for that ask. So in your workbook, take a few minutes to strategize an upcoming ask that you might have, and based on any of these techniques that we've talked about. I like that, but don't be desperate. Yes. So on the second page, right? Right. Hopefully that'll help you guys next time you find yourself in that position with or in that space with your donor and you're ready to give the ask. Some of the reasons, we're gonna go ahead and move on. Hello. I know you hear me.
Yeah.
It's like you're talking to your children. I know you hear me. Some reasons for failure to close. So inadequate prospecting and qualification. Like maybe it's that active listening or something fell short that you didn't pick up on. And so you presented in a way that wasn't resonating with the donor. It didn't touch their benefit or their why. And that's part of your insufficient needs discovery. And then maybe the timing is just off. And sometimes, you know, the donor's just not going to give, or it's not a right fit for your organization. But I think, you know, understanding as a fundraiser that failure to get the gift is not a failure on your part. This is not saying that you are not good at your job. You know, I think just as when they were talking about the idea of a nonprofit that they created for the sense that they can fail, if it wasn't possible for them to fail, then we would have for-profit organizations, just for-profit organizations. It's the same for a fundraiser. You know, I think that, you know, understanding that it's a work in progress, that we're all, again, working towards something. It's not about being perfect out of the gate. And all easier said than done. Yes, ma'am.
Megan, I'd like to contribute to that. I strongly feel that when people say no, they're not saying no to me as a fundraiser.
Yeah.
They're just saying no, not now. And I know Sal brought it up last week, and when I mentor, and you know, I use the analogy of dating. And I know Sal brought it up last week, but I think if we really keep that in mind, in that this is a courtship. You know, we talk relationship, but it's a courtship. And so if you do something out of step, if you're going to ask them to marry you and you get a hesitation, you have to look at yourself and not going through the process enough. And so I really feel that that's it. And I had a case one time where I knew this individual. We had been talking about, you know, $100,000 gift. And when I went and we did the ask, he said no. And I was so stunned.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I respect that, but if not now, when? And he shared with me then that his daughter had come to him a week prior and she was getting a divorce. And he all of a sudden was concerned about his assets.
Yeah.
And so again, it wasn't me. And then I just said, you know, I totally respect that. Can I check back with you, or when do you think we can talk? You know, and so I think it's important that just like in a courtship, if things don't go well and that person says, you know, I need just some space, then just say, you know, okay, but when? Yeah. And so, you know, and I think that's really important. And I think the other thing that we don't necessarily do when we're in these relationships is say, you know what, is there anybody else that, you know, you think that it would be worth talking to? You know, because you seem to care so much. Is there somebody else that we can talk with you?
Right.
And bring them in too. So
that's great.
Anyway, that's just.
And what made me think when you just said that is also, if our mission doesn't resonate directly with what you're wanting to do you know somebody else that it would? You know, I think so many times we get that sting of rejection and then we just want to take our ball and go home. You know? And it's like, fine, I didn't want you anyways. You know? But, you know, I think if we can you know, we have to be better human beings, you know, sometimes, and we have to rise above it and handle it with dignity. And I think, you know, a lot of times, and it'll touch on this in a little bit too, but, you know, even the small donors, you know, that's still important. So it reminds me of that, of like, you know, how we treat everybody matters. And this could be a sense of, testing the waters, like how am I going to be treated if I do say no? Oh, they just want my money and now they've just, you know, disappeared. So everything is a process. Yes, sir.
In addition to that, 3 of my classmates, I think 4 of us, were in a meeting this week. It was a joint meeting between the Plan Giving Councils of Palm Beach County and Broward County, and they had a guest speaker. And one of the things she talked about was location, making sure that there aren't distractions. She said definitely not a home in most cases, and not a loud restaurant, but a place where there's quiet and you have the donor's undivided attention, that you can make your pitch without distractions, phones, and kids, and otherwise.
That's a good point. Especially their home or, you know. So, recognizing signals of like when it's time for the ask. The first thing it's the nonverbals, and they call it the CHEF technique, but it's basically the cheek to chin touch. You can tell by their nonverbals that they're engaged in what you're saying. Their hands are relaxed, palms up. It means they're wanting to receive information. Eye contact, you know, they're looking at you in the eye. They're not averting their eyes from you. And being friendly, you know, the smile, engaging. You have that sense that they are really on board with what you're talking about.
Can you repeat what the C is?
Chin to, like cheek to chin, like they're like, you know, really intently kind of like engaged in what you're saying. And then, so the trial close, you know, I mean, obviously for the ask, you know, you're building up to this ultimate ask, and that's something that you're going to continue to do with the donor, but you can have you can do as many trial closes as you need to before you feel confident in doing the ask. And that's where, you know, you're asking the questions, you know, is this what you're looking for in a nonprofit? Is an initiative of this size a good fit for your philanthropic goals? You know, things like that, so that you have these kind of affirmatives of the things in your mind that like, well, they're saying yes to everything that I'm putting out, you know, and there's no objections at this point, so it just builds that confidence for the ask. And listen for the word we. So when they start saying people like us or we, then that means they have jumped on board with your mission. So everybody's seen this beautiful bell curve. But basically what this is saying is like this line in the middle of the will give line. And so there's a small percentage here that say yes very early. But usually you can feel, and this line moves. You know, it's not like it's a fixed line like, oh, I missed it and it's gone. It'll move, but there is a point where there is a point of no return in some instances with certain donors. So I think it's just understanding and having that sensitivity with each donor of knowing where that is. The key is to recognize the ideal moment at which a close can be made by watching the signals. You don't want them to be, you know, it's almost like dating. You know, if they put all the signals out there that, you know, they want the kiss, then, and you don't give it, then you've missed your opportunity.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So, as a brand new person to my organization, I'm sort of feeling where there's some donors that have sort of fallen off because there was like lapse of my position. So it's sort of like trying to figure out how to kind of rebuild that, but just even looking at timing and when that happens and how that happens has been just sort of a fun project for me.
Yep.
So I don't know if it ties necessarily into this, but in a way,
and we're going to talk about that specific thing in stewardship right after this section.
Thank
so
you.
Yeah, about the donors that all that those that maybe haven't given in 4 years or so, you know, however long. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am, sorry.
As far as a timeline, do you have a general idea on when that, what an average full circle is?
You know, it's so specific to an individual donor, but when you think of the cost selling cycle, you might go through all of that fairly quickly with one donor, and it might be slower with another. So I think it, again, a feeling like where are you at in that process? And if you've done all of those steps, then you're at the ask.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, we mentioned this last week, when Larry was showing one of the Gantt charts. One of the things that may be useful, if you're involved in fundraising, is to actually find out what the average is for your organization.
Yeah.
And most organizations don't do that. They don't see when the conversation initiates and when it ends, and all the steps in between. And so one of the Gantt charts has that with all particular donors, particular corporate individuals, all the different tactics that you're going to get in order to secure that donation. Right? So there's a timeline, but eventually there's an average timeline that is going to take for your organization. And so that way you also understand what is the return of investment for that you spend, the indirect cost and direct cost of what it takes to secure that donation, right? And
So there are some strategies,
yes.
and you can collect.
Based on your
Yes.
organizational
Yes.
history, that's
Yes.
a good point.
Yes. Yeah, and so and again, for every organization is going to be different, but there is a timeline, an average timeline, or you can have parameters around it as to what is the maximum time it's going to take, what is the least amount of time. This is beyond this class, beyond the scope of the class, but I do a lot of statistical modeling, and that modeling can be, for example, donates, doesn't donate, and I can have all those characteristics, so I can find out the probability that somebody's going to donate. Again, that's beyond this class. But that's something that you can do, because given someone's characteristics, you can assess a probability that the person's going to give. Okay? But that requires a lot of data, and having the sophistication to do that modeling, right? Which is something that we haven't talked here, and it's something that the book doesn't talk about. But it's something that I'm willing to do if you ask. Ask me, and I'll not do that. But you have to have all the data that's necessary to do it. Yes, you can ask.
It's an ask.
And you know me, I won't say no.
Yeah,
Man, Sal. I like it's just like blank checks left and right. I know. Dealing with rejection. Anticipate and rise above. So again, paying attention to those nonverbals. Someone say something? Sorry.
Yes, I mean, when we were discussing the effective closing strategies that you finished at 6, I added deal with the response, not with the rejection.
Yes.
Because I believe we take it too personal.
Yep.
So then I was explaining, our research teacher did too, outside, that when you understand why they don't donate, you can actually be more effective next time, or build it anyways a relationship, because people don't want to feel like you're just using me for this donation and then you're going to forget about me.
Right.
So I wrote like, okay, if it was the amount or not right now, why not right now? Some people have told me it's not the program that I thought. It doesn't mean that they don't care about my organization, it's just that they're waiting for the right program. So I keep them posted.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just the amount, okay, let's deal with the amount, how do you feel comfortable? Or sometimes, as you say, it's not what I thought.
Yeah.
But how can I help you differently? Can you refer me someone that'll be interested in this?
Yeah, because how you handle that engagement,
Exactly.
it could lead to another connection somewhere else, or you just never know what's going to happen. It was interesting in here, they did have a few little tidbits of, famous folks that, failed several times before, and I just want to share some of these with you. So Steven Spielberg was rejected 3 times by film school until he was finally accepted. Stephen King's iconic book Carrie was rejected 30 times by publishers. When Elvis Presley was still an unknown, the Grand Ole Opry manager, Jimmy Denny, told him, "You ain't going nowhere, son. You ought to go back to driving a truck." As a sophomore, Michael Jordan didn't make the cut for the varsity basketball team. And Walt Disney was once fired by a newspaper editor because he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. So, if any of those folks would have taken that rejection and just said, "Oh, okay, that person's right about me," then we wouldn't have all of the wonderful things that they brought into our world. So I think it's the same, whether it's somebody that's touching millions of people or individually, how we're touching our community around us. So anticipate and rise above. Expect it, but don't create it. Don't create the scenario. Broaden your definition of success. I think this is a very, very good point. That instead of looking only at the outcomes, and I've had to do this with my folks, when you have anybody that's in any sort of sales position, it's a lot of their worth is tied to the numbers. Oh, how many people did I get? Or did I close that? And then they either feel successful or like a failure. So I've, spent a lot of time, because you want them to be proactive and happy in their roles, so you have to find ways to change the measurement of success. So is it that you resulted in a gift, maybe it's not. Maybe it's the relationship. Maybe you're valuing the other things that you're bringing to the table to your organization. So broaden your idea of what success looks like. Attract more donors than you need. So you're not like hanging your hat on the few and then those fall through and then, you know, you're left going, you know, really now what do I do? Remember, you're not alone. Everybody in this room has felt rejection, has been rejected, has been told no. And forgive yourself. Again, another important one. You know, we're human, and I think we say these words, but really allowing it to resonate inside of ourselves, of knowing that we're not perfect, you know, but being humble and realizing that we are all on this journey, it allows the same thing for us to fail, for us to take risks, for us to try new things.
Megan, there's a phrase that I use, and we're in development or advancement. We're not in magic, and you're not unicorns.
I love it.
We're not.
You're not a development unicorn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Engage in positive self-talk. And refuse to give up. You know, you started on this journey for a reason, and I think it's always connecting back to your own why and finding ways to do that. Know you're important because of who you are. It's not what you're doing. Anybody want to add anything else that falls in line here?
This previous colleague used to talk about planting seeds, and so even if something doesn't get a yes right away, you're still planting the seed for next time.
Yep.
So there's still value in that.
And I totally agree, and it's like, you know, they could still be coming to your events. They can still be champions of your cause. I mean, there's a lot of different areas to assign, you know, value to those relationships. Mary?
I've been told that insurance salesmen are told that a no is just that much closer to you.
Yeah.
That you need, they seem to think something like it takes 10 calls to make one close. And that's the way they operate. I mean, I don't know that I could live like that.
Yeah.
You know, knowing that you're not going to be successful every single time, but not only you're learning, but you're getting closer to someone who will
Right.
give you eventually. It might be a nice, interesting booster, personally.
Yeah.
I switched careers when I was about 36, and it took me 4 months of no's to finally get a yes. So that was 8 hours, 7 days a week of no's. And then now I'm at the top of my field.
Yeah.
Never give up, never take it personally.
And it's hard. It can be demoralizing
Yeah.
for sure.
But it never felt demoralizing.
That's good.
Because you learned at that point it wasn't personal. To keep going.
Yeah. Jamie?
My first job in sales, I learned the stats of the 10 are yeses, 7 are nos, and 2 are maybes. And I think those are the ones you need to persuade. And if every time you get a no, all right, great, we got that one out of the way, so the chances of the next one being a no are lower.
Yeah.
I got the no out of the way.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
So I too had the joy of working in sales for quite a bit, and even when I had those no's, it was always the fact that I left with the relationship that was still intact. So rather it was no to this situation, that doesn't mean that down the line it was no to another project or proposal that I may have presented for something completely different. And in fact, I've had some situations where it was a no for the smaller amount, but when I went big, I got the yes. So it was kind of awkward and odd, but it was to broaden your definition of success, coming back to the table and repositioning what you're asking for, and even giving a larger, ask to that, kind of helps define that. So, yeah, relationships.
Yeah.
Lead with the relationship.
That sums up our conversation about the ask. So we'll take a quick 15-minute break, 10-15-minute break. I'm going to go run and print some of the pitch worksheets for you guys, so that I'm sure that you have them and you're And I don't want to see a whole lot of absentees next week. It's graduation, there's a celebration, so many things happening.
Champagne? Mimosas?
Yes. Is there a way, I mean, I'm not opposed to that, but it would be cool if maybe y'all can show her programs. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be yeah, I'm gonna tell you your why.
Yeah. But I know you said you were gonna run into something. I can catch you.
Okay, actually, yes.
So yeah, there is something that he never needs to get They didn't invite yeah, they don't live anywhere. That's why
this energy, how are we?
No problem.
It was that traumatic.
I was so enjoying. You weren't feeling good.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah.
I'm like,
How are you?
yeah, for an extra
But if you also put on the resume that you raised X amount of money, that's a specific project. You said that.
Oh, the plan now is like not here, so.
There you go.
I don't think quite much.
Oh,
Okay.
you said something, you said,
Just go through the has a produce now.
You're answering.
And nobody was there. And now it's like,
Right, right. Right, exactly. Have to. Yeah. You gotta be conscious. Aware that you're being.
So it's one of those things like, and think of those things like that. Always be able to like, even like 4 or 5 versus like 4 or 5
So here's the irony. We weren't the only ones.
I know, I know, we were just saying it there. Oh yeah. We ran into each other in the parking lot, and these lovely ladies are in the same queue. We should take a group picture together in the morning.
I love mustard yellow. One of my and with black, it's like you're we have a pollinator garden at our botanical garden, so you can come and put them out there.
That's our photo op location. Do you guys have a lot of people doing like photo shoots at your? I'm sure, right?
So our last big one was about a month ago with Vogue magazine. We had Gigi Hadid out there, who I guess, from what I heard, was very sweet and loved our baby. But I can't think of the name of the woman, Carol from Vogue, the editor. She said, I want to make this photo shoot. So they came out.
That's so great. That's amazing. Oh my God.
We got the, a couple years ago, The Rock was doing It was before I started, but he was doing that TV show, the Ballers, on HBO or something. So they did a shoot there.
Oh, that's really
yeah, and they said it was really nice to the kids. Yeah, we do get some fun stuff because it is a very great respect. A lot of people get married there. Yeah, lots of weddings. You know, you've got peacocks all around you. What's not to like or what kind of a photo op?
It's funny, when I came, so I'm from Boston and I moved to Miami 12 years ago. So I had 2 job offers and I went one direction, but the direction I did not go was I almost went with Fairchild then in Miami. So I almost ended up in your arena, but then I chose a different path, which had me around the nonprofits and stuff, but I literally was going to be like running all their events and Fairchild.
Well, it's a lot of time for me because I moved down here with my husband's job. You know, I'm not even a girl anymore, and it's like, okay, what am I going to do? I've managed marketing for downtown business associations, which are nonprofits, but they're 501c3s. I never did
What is your position exactly?
I'm director of development membership, so I'm just kind of stumbling. And I was very transparent with him. I said, yeah, the executive director, he had a lot of challenges, and I said, I know I'm a generalist, and I'll have a little bit of a learning curve, which shouldn't be an issue for me since I'm management. But, you know, I told him, I said, I've been in your shoes, and you are this executive director of the nonprofit very well job because you are the only hired person to the board, and then everybody else is hired to provide you. And so you don't have peers either way. And so I said, I'm going to do that. And I make a really good directing person. Because, and I've done that before where you're where I can, you know, be a sounding board. That's awesome. I get what he's going through. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I had more marketing background, but actually through membership is how I started getting into ballet. So I started running the membership program and then started growing into individual corporate giving all tied together. But it was similar to those skills cross over.
Exactly. It was like I came in and we got a consultant. She's like, so what's your new management plan? And I looked over my executive director and looked at me and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Because in 501c3 now we do stewardship with our labor sponsors, but we aren't going after a funding mechanism in place through a government contract.
But it's like in the end, it's still. I found like at first it was like a scary monster to me because I was like, I know how to get sponsorships, I know corporate things, selling memberships, no problem. Right. And then everything at first was like, oh, I don't know how to ask for anything. But then I was like, it's just talking, it's just building relationships. I don't think that I know more. I think it's just finding their patterns and connecting it. But it's still like every once in a while I have a little party in my here and I'm like cutting shit. So like, and I'm just like, dude, the guy was so very how long have you been I told him I never worked for you. Okay, so you're still like this that so I'm like, you know, sometimes like someone like staff is like, oh, go like people may ask me to be a director. I said no, because you want to be a creator, you should be a relationship. It's not a person. You're not I'm gonna take time. I was amazing as I am. I can talk to her about whatever. You never know. You have to have connections with people and so I'm like, I'm not making an ask now. The perfect sponsorship, I don't know that because it becomes someone else. That's fine.
Butterfly can be extended That's the thing, yes, that's the thing. Like, either you pay now,
Which is also kind of a misstep, right? Because then there's like what happens in that room. Hi, how are you? Hi, Lisa. How are you? Good, good. We the Palm Beach had their reunion girls luncheon yesterday, so we got to see. It was well. Theirs was a lot smaller. Like they had about 300, whereas we have more like 500. But it was sweet for me to see it because now I know what to expect for 2 weeks from now. So that was nice. Okay. Tiring. I have my flyers in here, you know, in my bag. I saw Steve. We went to an event. We were at an event, I think it was Thursday night or Wednesday, and we were just working the room with the luncheon. So we had the luncheon, so, you know, Memorial Hospital for coming luncheon, which is amazing. So we were like working it, and you know, we got so many commitments, so I'm like, okay. So he's like, how many tables do you think you have? I said, so I think I have 2 in total. We're working on more. External community. Like some of my colleagues have no I'm trying to get up more. And that's what used to do a table. Yes. Right? At Broward College. Yeah. Well, Broward College, we have some folks on our board. I think I mentioned some. Yeah. So we had professional development. You know, I just have to advocate for patients. Listen, that's not a problem. To me, it's like the more people in the community talking about us, how awesome we are, the better. I need to get your cell phone number because there's like fun networking. I'm still trying to get to know Broward. I need to become a meeting. I have this exclusive event. It's like a $45 million young guys group from the beach. It's next month, I believe. It's on South Beach, though. It's on the island, I think. So the thing with South Beach is because we have our Miami Center, it's not a fun event. It's just kind of, you know, different.
For those that are waiting on hot water, they're bringing it right now. So you need it.
If I can invite one of my students, my sister raises money for Academy. We raise money for Broward. Well, I was thinking more like this is an awful like event, like you just getting to know. Sure, you know, it's really connected. These people are all in judges and I don't know, politicians and so it's 9 to 4, 5 a.m.
Wait for a second.
I'm so sorry. Do that again, 9 to 5. Thank you. So today we have a conference. Is this not what I want? Hosted by, yes, no one. So I'll be speaking today. So I said I'm bringing flyers for pace because I need to get it in the audience. So just luncheon, you know, that's on my announcement screen. By the way, I'm looking for a career let's Let's find this time to either, it's not kind of event, let's have a weekend also have time to chat, and then we can, I just texted you my number, so you can like, yeah, let's go. I'm coming out of the second story. And the thing is,
they do this with and then they go, they keep the algae, and they go in and they skim off of the water. Yeah, it's very interesting. Their behavior is just, it's kind of hard to understand. There are different different things so you will and then we have to and then the rest are all those are American Caribbean. They change color. I don't know why, yeah, they're you see this light colored African. The ones that are color are made and the sugar we're going to use for backwards. Oh my God, you can watch them. Yeah, you can. I could, well, I could if I didn't have to work, I definitely would.
Right, but it's their mind, and their life. Things could have been I guess that's where I mentioned that's what I just need to bring them into. Oh, that's good. Yes. I saw you smiling. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot of content to go over. And again, don't want to rush us, but if we, whatever. Yes. What? Where are they? That's a good question. Yeah. Don't get me started on that. So, and whatever we don't get through today, we will go ahead and bring it to next week, just because I want to make sure we have enough time for our speaker and all that stuff, and any questions that you guys might have. But I did print some of the pitch handouts here, so if anybody, I know you, how many do you want? If anybody wants them, I'm just going to set them over here on the desk, and you can grab them. So again, next week, we'll be doing, everybody will have an opportunity to come up here and share your pitch. So I would suggest you pair off or with some colleagues, you know, go through it and fine tune it for next week. And if you have any questions for me, then feel free to reach out. I'm happy to walk through it with you. Or no, it's the same one. Oh, yeah. I just printed them just in case you wanted it right now. Yes, sir. Well, no, I was actually about to touch on that. So if you can, but I would suggest if you're a big organization and there's a few of you here, then maybe you pick different projects or services to focus on. Because I think that would be helpful for all of us to kind of see the different things that you have going on and maybe how to help perfect each of those pitches in each of the areas, which I think is a unique opportunity because sometimes, you know, you just put this whole umbrella thing over it and it'll help you figure out and fine tune those little things. All right.
Thank you.
And then also one more housekeeping thing. If you've missed a class, please, before next week, and you're wanting to get your certificate and CFRE and all that, credit and all that, be sure to go in there and submit your workbook so that you can get participation credit for the day that you missed. Yes?
Is there like, for the CFRE, like if we have taken this class, is there like a discount, you know, on the regular CFRE?
There's no fee. What do you mean?
No, the exam,
Oh.
Oh,
that I do not know. We can find out for you though.
So education.
Yeah.
What's that mean?
The exam.
Submit your workbook. I mean, like I watched it. You have to do something additional.
Yeah, so there's the workbook that you get in class is online. So you, as you watch it, just fill it out and then you'll submit it, and you can submit it at that link that we gave you.
And is it just the workbook?
Just the workbook, and some weeks there are activities as well. But you'll see, like under the modules for each of those days that you missed, you'll see what's on there, and it's pretty clear about what you need to do. And if you have questions, yes ma'am, then let me know.
I just want to let everyone know, this is my last class, because next week my daughter is getting married. The wedding is next week, but a pre-service is next Saturday, and then the wedding's 2 weeks after that.
And we're all invited.
I wanted to thank everybody, and I want to know if we could, did we get everybody's contact information?
Yes. Well, there's a directory that we'll send out for everybody, so that when you don't have to get access through Canvas and all that, but we'll send out a directory.
And the one thing I found that was so awesome, and I'll just let you guys know, there's a lot of brilliance in this room. I have been so impressed.
You're welcome.
And
humility.
I've been in the bubble of my own organization, and this community is very lucky to have all you in this field. So nice meeting you.
Thank you. And we would love to give you feedback on your pitch if you want.
You're going to get my email.
Okay, so you can send a video if you want.
I do.
Okay. And then we can shoot that out to either me or to the group, and you can get some feedback from it. Perfect. Okay. All right, stewardship. The way you follow up with donors is just as important as, or even more important than the gift itself. So we'll talk about learning the 3 keys to donor retention, practice writing an exceptional thank you letter, brainstorm ways to use social media to build donor loyalty, and learn tactics for retaining donors and winning back lapsed donors. So just a few statistics. The renewal rate of donors who give a second time after the first gift is 50%. And then 90% of donors disappear within 5 renewal campaigns. So where are they going? The problem is an epidemic that is plaguing the nonprofit landscape. People are giving and then seeking but not finding satisfaction and then moving on to another cause. So following up with the results from their ask. The key to, so on your worksheet, it'll have a place there for the key to cultivating donors is to find ways to meet the donors' growing expectations and to increase their level of engagement with the institution beyond the transaction of the gift. So again, that's also going to be different depending on your donor. You know, they may want to be engaged with the clients that you serve and mentoring, whatever it might be, but it's finding ways to connect them or reconnect them to your organization. There was a study that found that the critical bonding window for a first-time donor was in the first 3 months. So that means your nonprofit should be working intensely to form a deeper connection with your donors within the first 3 months of receiving their initial gift. This is even more important considering the fact that donors who contribute again within the 3 months of their first donation give much more than those who give 12 months later. And reaching out to them after the gift is not to ask for another gift. And this is the strategy that comes with the whole process. So 3 keys to donor retention. Think like a donor. And I think many of you have touched on this for sure, is one way to think like a donor is to be a donor. How many in here are also a donor? Beautiful. And I think that gives you that unique perspective of what it feels like to be on the other side. And when we have that personal experience, then we're able to be way more authentic with how we're approaching the donors and what our expectations are. Another way to think like a donor is to get to know them. The real them, like really getting engaged with what's important to them, not just getting to that end result, but cultivating that relationship. And when we do broaden our idea of success, then I think we'll also find that we're more engaged in the relationship itself versus what that relationship's going to give us or our organization. And then another way to think like a donor is to communicate a competitive advantage. You know, I think, you know, as some of you have mentioned, you know, a lot of missions are very similar, and donors want to know what's different about giving to your organization versus another organization that might have a similar goal or vision that yours does. And then going that extra mile. Everybody knows that when somebody does something for you that they didn't have to do, or that was just an extra little thought, that, you know, when you get that handwritten note or when you get that special call, you know, just going that little extra step that makes them feel important and special. Another way for donor retention is say thank you like you mean it. Only 1 in 4 donors receive thank you letters, and the majority of those are form letters. Penelope Burke, a nonprofit consultant and author of Donor Center Fundraising, says that 45% of donors said it was an outstanding thank you letter that inspired them to give again. And 23% said they gave more generously because of the quality of the acknowledgement that they received. And then treat every donor like a major donor. I know that's tough because resources are limited, your resources are limited, but if you treat everybody the same, then again, you don't know when a $50 donation one time might turn into a $10,000 donation the next time.
I have a good example. We have our gala next Sunday, and I was looking through our database and I found this donor who appears to be, and a member who appears to be elderly, and she gives 100 or a few hundred a year, but over the span she's given us $10,000. So I called and invited her to be a guest of ours at our gala as opposed to buying a ticket. And she almost cried. She said, I don't have a lot, but I give where I can to different organizations, and nobody has ever acknowledged me like that before.
Yeah.
And it goes so far just to do something that is easy for you to do, you know.
And I think, you know, and that then impacts you. You know, it's interesting. It's like, you know, the major donors are used to being coddled and used to being, you know, waited on and getting all of those accolades. And so that appreciation for that is not always there. But when you have, I mean, that can just feed right back into your why and give you that motivation that you need to keep trucking, you know?
Right.
So 4 P's of following up, that's because I said prompt. 4 P's of following up, be prompt. Send the letter as soon as you receive the gift. Personalized. And no stock letters where everybody knows that they're getting the same letter that everybody else that gave to your organization. Be passionate. Warmly convey gratitude and explain how the funds will be used and what the impact, and then you can follow up again with that happy ending story. Be positive, make your donors smile, feel glad they gave, and feel proud of your organization and the contribution through an upbeat message. So in your handout, there's a sample there. And just quickly look at it. I don't want to spend too much time on this because you guys, I'm sure at this, feel pretty confident in your thank you letter. But this is just an example of what you can do to improve. Like, you want to look at this and figure out, think about those 4 P's and how could you improve on this particular letter. And if anybody, as you're reading through it, if something pops in your mind, just share it.
So I always like to first of all say, like, this is very generic about what work they're doing. So I like to kind of say, like, your gift allows us to, and then tell a personal story. So we try to tell like girl stories and choose girls, and we switch up the stories often to make sure it's
fresh,
the same story every weekend. So,
I think that adds to that personalization.
I try to take it a step further than just even a letter like this. If I know their email or their actual cell phone number, I try to send them an immediate picture of them participating in whatever activity they were dealing with. That way they also know that that is the thank you, that you were there, you mattered, and that you may see this again somewhere else. And again, it's building them into understanding that they made a difference.
And then it's also making them part of your community.
Right.
Yes, Judy.
I feel like this letter is more of a sales pitch than anything else, where it's like, this is who we are, but I know that's why I gave you a donation. I know who you are, so really focusing more on the impact of if it's $100 to feed an animal or to feed a shelter dog for a month, like, you helped this dog.
I think
your husband for a month, or help take care of this dog's vaccine, this cat's.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think this is more like a gift acknowledgement letter versus a thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The harsh words, killing, that should never
I think those, to the point of using positive affirmative words. Yeah. But I think to the point of really, yes, focusing on that impact. Where did their money, how is their contribution impacting the organization or the event or whatever? How to maximize current donors. For consistent donor follow-up can lead to referrals, retention, reputation, and revenue. So loyal donors encourage others to support your organization. Donors who continue to give to your organization provide a solid, reliable base. And loyal donors speak well to others, and they'll be your biggest advocate and champions. Loyal donors give you with more of what your cause needs, the revenue needed to continue furthering the cause, to the points earlier of unrestricted funds to help support your programs and initiatives. So again, gaining a new donor costs 5 times more than keeping an existing one. And I'm sure on every level we felt the frustration of how much effort is given to getting something, and then the effort kind of falls short when it comes retaining the donor or retaining any sort of service or relationship that you have. So you know, when you think about this in dollars, if you think traditional, like truly, it's 5 times more expensive for me to go cultivate a new relationship than it is for me to maintain and improve the relationships that I have. So using social media for follow-up. Instead of breaking into groups, I just want us to talk about this out loud. So if we have, how could we use social media to follow up and keep a stewardship going with the donor for an individual donor, like an individual gift?
So this is where I would do like a nice post about the donor in general, not necessarily talking about what their gift was, but how they're involved in the organization and how, you know, so like taking someone that's maybe also a volunteer as well as a donor or a board member, and just kind of like having special days that we call out our partners like that.
I love that. Like little highlights. Anybody else use anything?
Post pictures of the event or the donor, like what, besides the text message right away with a picture of what the donor was doing or what the person was doing that the donor gave to, that's what we are recognizing. And then you're posting on of their Facebook page or Instagram.
Yeah. Well, social media is engagement. So people want to know really what you're doing and how you're doing it and why. Yeah. Once I start posting, even our meetings, people engage in media. And they want to know how they want to help, and they ask a lot of questions. Out of everybody that has connected with us through social media, some of them, they live in Georgia. I feel that I know this family, they're so involved. They live in different areas that sometimes they cannot reach out, but they will either send a check or, but they want to, the main thing I see is how can we grow happy to be outside of Florida. So now I have identified 3 cities that I know that eventually we're going to grow there, based on the amount of people that engage with me and they're supporting our cause. So it's not going to happen overnight. We don't have the people, but I know there is a need. So it's just that the engagement comes not only following up with our donors. This is what we did. We play a little video and we do let's say a campaign. We circle back. We say this is what we've done in the money. This is what we have achieved. You know, we're open for business. We're constantly telling them what's up, but also informing new people what are we about.
Right.
So, because it has to go both ways. You have to assume somebody's just gonna click on you today and they don't know.
Well, and that's the huge benefit about social media, because you know you get the benefit of thanking your donor, but you also get to use that as a platform and opportunity to create potential new donors.
The lady, see, like Michelle sits next to you. I don't know if you noticed it, but there's photographs that she takes after the speaker, and then she posts that online. Some of those postings actually, I don't know if you remember Daniel Kruger that we first had this photo. Because Michelle posted all the photos of Daniel speaking, they received individual donations because of the posting that she did. Right? And so that was additional money that they didn't have, which they got. Because of, because of so, you know, again, you post them, someone's gonna respond to it, right, internationally or even locally, and then submit the donation, right? And then it's up to them, Jake and Daniel, to follow up with that donor that donates. So there's a follow-up.
I find also through that posting, if you post on social media about a donor, it helps the donor and it helps the organization also. We had our first 5K last week. That's why we were absent. And we found that 2 days before, as our donors, as our sponsors and our donors grew, there were more people. 2 days before, there were people calling us, can I still sponsor? Can I still join? We had to tell them, okay, if you want to give us your money,
we'll take it.
We'll take it. But we had people wanting to join and wanting to assist us because of our posting, okay, these people are going to be at our 5K. We were thanking them before the actual event.
Yeah, that's great.
I have a question about the slide before. I find that in our office, that there's a lot of time devoted to this,
Mhm.
but not a lot of time devoted to bringing in new. Or not by design, just that this feels, I guess, more doable or easier, or it's not as challenging as you said, because it takes 5 times more effort, cost, whatever to bring in a new. Is there, how would you say we should be in terms of our time for the, the work week? Allotting it.
You know, for me, and that's why I loved the strategic planning thing that we went through, that we took you guys through, because
Right.
it is a lot of the planning, and every organizational structure is going to be different. But a
Right.
big component of that is understanding your target and what is your impact audience? Like, how many people can you, like, what is your target? You know what I'm saying? So if you are already serving your population, whatever that is, as he's saying, whatever your group is, if you're serving 80% of that, then maybe you do need to spend more time maintaining and cultivating the relationships that you already have. But if that's not the case, then the ratio would change. And so if you feel like if you guys are experiencing a lot of stagnation, and like maybe a lot of donors are just kind of staying here, or maybe just, then you need to, one, figure out what the message is here of what's not resonating for them to be inspired to give more or to continue to give. But then I would probably put a lot more emphasis on getting new donors.
Well, the other thing, Lauren's not here.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lauren's not here. And Lauren had mentioned about the not only the person that donates, that eventually she's going to go on. And so you have to think about the nutrition that you have in the donor. Right? And so you have to plan for that accordingly. Because once those people go, you're going to have to have invest more time in getting those new donors to replace that person. So, I mean, again, it depends on the age of, if you have very good data on your donors, you should be able to then come up with a strategy of sort of when they're going to expire and how you're going to grow their donor base, right? But also, if you are getting stagnant, you should also consider, what time should you allow to get to recruit new folks coming in, right? When I was let me give an analogy. When I was a director of budget office and so forth, I knew I was going to face some attrition. I had sort of knew that I was going to have to face that attrition, but I also was thinking, okay, if the attrition is going to happen at this sort of time, then when can I start setting up the recruitments or potential people that can come in to fill those gaps? And so I always sort of anticipated those sort of things. But again, we talk about donors and even local corporations. If you have to sort of think that way because it's long term, right? So how are you going to grow that revenue base that you need to grow? How are you going to grow the donor base? If your current donors are not expanding their donation, then you're going to have to get additional people that are going to make up that gap as the organization expands. Right? So you have to think sort of multifaceted and multidimensional, because then that's going to answer your question of, okay, how much time do I need to spend in cultivating new donors, and what is the anticipated amount that I'm supposed to target, so that we can meet our expenses or future expenses. Right? Going back to the needs. So again, if you go back to that chart that we had earlier today about finding out where things, how your organization sort of is interrelated and so forth, then that sort of gives you an idea of sort of how much time you need to allot. Right? Just very quickly, like the new thing that we have here, is spending pretty close to like 75% trying to cultivate new donors, individuals that are important. Because what happened in the previous administration, that care wasn't given. And so because he's new here, and because he wants to grow the organization, the school, he needs to spend more time doing all of that, which should have been done years ago. Because it wasn't done years ago, now he has to spend more time doing that than he should.
And when I was a campus director and we're thinking about our programming, and you can get so inundated with just operational things, and you can find yourself like the week just gets by you and you're sitting there and all you've done is respond to emails and phone calls, and then you haven't been out doing all the things that you need to be doing, cultivating the new relationships, whether it's I'm going to stop by these 5 different organizations and just hand our brochure out, or make a connection. So what we did is, you know, at least one day a week that we devoted to only doing new business. You know, and so that you can, because if you don't strategically plan this, your day will get, I mean, there's a million things that, you know, back to our rocks, right? I mean, there's a million things that are going to take your energies and time away, and then again, measuring your own success, if you put that in your mind that that's what you wanted to do and then you didn't do it, then you're setting yourself up for failure.
Within the local callers up in GTAs, short net, our ambassadorships, we're all sort of assigned to different areas. I'm a strategist and I'm a connector. So basically that's what I do. I take the photographs, I get connections, I put people in touch with other people. That's what I did in class. I actually found these people, I put the pictures up online, people are connecting with people. So with different organizations, with funders. So I'm always looking for new business. That's what I do, which in turn actually strengthens our organization. What we want to do is we want to make connections around the world for human rights. And how we do that, we build power and strength by connecting everyone around the world. And you do that with people that care about the world. So that's how we're doing that. And so it's constantly new business. And you're looking for new business all the time. So within your organization, there should be someone who's dedicated to looking for new business and strategizing that to grow your business. So we grow by ambassadorships somewhere between 30 to maybe 100 new ambassadors that are dedicated to different tasks. You know, they may be for different purposes. You know, maybe children, maybe autism, trafficking, all different types of causes. So it will resonate with any person.
And there's,
so to make those connections.
I totally agree, and I like that model. And the thing is there's tons of different models, and what's really going to shape that are the strengths of your team. You know, sometimes, you know, and that'll guide like what kind of model your organization or your recruitment team or outreach team develops. You know, I think that, you know, if I have, you know, say for example, I have two, I'm going to speak my language as in education, as two recruiters. You know, maybe one I know is amazing at relationships and making that ask and doing the closing. And then another one is great at just being very positive and has a good energy and is good for the awareness and the brand awareness and just getting the message out there. So then if you have the luxury to kind of see who's the strengths are and dividing the work out in that way, I think it's very, very beneficial because you're putting people where their strengths are, and then they're also going to feel successful. But if you, again, sometimes we find ourselves in situations where we're the lone dog and you got to do everything. And so when that's the case, you know, you do need to be very strategic about your schedule and about what activities you need to do and devote time to those things.
Thank you.
So back to Morgan's question of here of winning backs and lapsed donors. Right. You can only affect what is under your control. Repeat donors should be a key component of your organization's financial strategy. Even so, a certain amount of that donor attrition is expected. Some of those reasons, like financial circumstances, timing, you know, some of those things are just out of what your control, or, you know, to your point earlier, Barbara, about, you know, it just wasn't, you know, circumstance in life came up and the timing wasn't right at that point. So concentrate your efforts and target. So winning back donors may require a significant investment of your time, so be strategic. You know, really outline the plan of what you're going to do to regain those donors. Begin by identifying your best lapsed prospects. In terms of maximizing your efforts, consider limiting your attention to donors who have given in the last 48 months or whatever that timeline is best for your organization. And then once you have a list of your donors targeted for recommitment, begin by doing research in their donation history. Look for patterns in the way they give, the timing of the year that they give, and anything that might help you identify a new way to connect with them. So remind them of their why. So try to get them thinking a bit about what drew them into your organization to begin with. On the other hand, if you learn that something went wrong, that also gives you a new opportunity to address those things and to fix the issue. If you don't communicate with your donors at any point, then you're losing an opportunity to improve your own processes, improve the processes of your organization. Shake up your email list. There is a term in the nonprofit world known as unemotional subscribed. So, and I think we all do this. You subscribe to all of these different newsletters and emails, and then it comes into your inbox, and then every day you take time to delete it or ignore it. I mean, you don't unsubscribe, you don't send it to junk, so it's just there and then it's gone. And so go through your lists, and if you have folks that have not opened your emails in a specific period of time, then you either remove them from your list, you can send "we miss you" and try to reconnect with them. Let's see, move them to a new list where you're going to create a new campaign to address, so that maybe they're not getting as many emails from you, or maybe they're getting more targeted emails, because if you know that they haven't been communicating with you or coming to your events or opening your emails, then that messaging would be different than with a donor that is going to your events and is opening. And it just shows that personalization, because if I know that I'm going to an event and I receive an email message or an announcement that makes me feel like you didn't know that I was there, then it's going to impact me in the way that I feel about my relationship with your organization. And then set up a re-engagement email series in which you actively pursue former donors through a series of messages with various requests for action. And again, at some point, it's not about how many people you have on a list. It's about quality. You want to figure out how to, and I think this is great. I love the idea of sectioning them out into a new email campaign so that you can try different tactics and different things to see what might work. Yes.
It's so funny you said that, because in sales, back in the day when I left the service and I was recruiting individuals, you intentionally delete everybody. You send out messages that they're being deleted, they're being removed, and then you see how many respond back to you. Those who respond back to you are the ones that you now want to re-engage with in a different way, and the other ones that don't respond back to you, you move on. Yeah. Now you cleaned out your file, you cleaned out your information, and then you put them into a automation type of a system, like you just said.
Yeah, maybe once a month they get something.
Yeah, it's automatically sent out.
Yeah, that actually happened to me with the Juilliard.
Is that right?
Yeah. So the Juilliard School music in New York City. It says I'm under newsletter and stuff, and I contribute. Okay. And so I got to the point where I was not opening the email. And so I got this nice little email saying, if you don't open your email and stuff, we're going to delete you. Right? And so I was like, okay, I better start reading. And so I do that. So I make sure that I open it up. I spend significant time looking at everything that they did, and then I delete it because I know that I've read it, I opened it, because I don't want to get deleted again. And it keeps me engaged.
Wow. What if you're like, who cares? Then it's good. We mentioned that earlier. I think it was Jamie or somebody saying, well, at least now you have that no, and so you can move on to the people that are going to say yes. So in summary, the goal is to build a long-term relationship, not receive a one-time donation. Reduce attrition with the 3 keys, and say thank you like you mean it. Fostering donor loyalty is an ongoing activity. Make a plan and follow it. Just talk a little bit about major gifts. Understanding what is a major gift, which is different for every organization. Learn how to determine the appropriate major gift size for your organization, explore the traditional major gifts process, and practice planning for a major gift solicitation. So the 7 principles of major gift fundraising. So major donors don't give to satisfy an organization's benefit, for their needs or their benefit. It's to satisfy their own needs. Major donors are looking for a partner to help them satisfy their needs, one they can trust. I mean, to the point, Kim, about, you know, wanting to give stocks over money. I mean, it's that relationship that's going to help you continue to build. Because, you know, at some point you could have lost that opportunity altogether, and you would have not. You would have known why. Oop, shoot, wrong button. Okay. Major donors yearn for an organization that will give them an opportunity to help change the world and make an impact. You know, again, you know, cultivate that risk-taking activity and that spirit inside all of us. Major donors want to give through an organization, not to an organization. I think that's a good point. You know, they want to give through your organization, not to. Major donors want the organization and staff to facilitate the process by making it easy, convenient, pleasurable, and valuable, so it enhances their life. You don't want it to be a burden or a complicated process. Major donors want to be heard and involved, not ignored and treated like an ATM machine. Major donors want to be engaged in a partnership, not a solicitation. So, you know, be prepared for engagement, you know, truly having that partnership on how to help build a better program, help build a better initiative, instead of, you know, thinking that we know how everything needs to go down. Everybody, you know, comes to the table with new and innovative ideas and experiences, and taking all of that kind of, you know, as I mentioned one time about that whole beginner's mind, you know, I think it's a beautiful kind of blank slate space to start and to have a conversation with major donors so that they feel connected to your why and what you're talking with them about. So the term major gift means something different at every organization. They are the largest donations your organization receives in a year, excluding planned gifts. So usually nonprofits have a range. So to determine that, I'm going to kind of go through the whole process here. So to test against your data, so first pull 5 to 10 donors who have given the largest gift to your organization. Eliminate the outliers, the few that, you know, like gave more or gave less, and get this nice median. Set the minimum and then test it against your database. So if you have a lot that are in that range, then maybe your number's too low. If you don't have any, it'll help you kind of fine-tune that sweet spot of what your major gift should look like.
Megan, I'm not sure I understand.
Uh-huh. It's okay. So, and for all your donors, you'll get about 5 or 10 of them that give the largest amount.
Okay.
And if there's a huge span, like if there's an outlier that, you know, if you have somebody that gave 50,000 and then there's somebody that gave 200,000,
yeah,
then remove the 200,000
okay,
and get the median.
yes,
And then test that to your database as a whole. So if you then look at other folks, and if the rest of your database, no one gave anywhere close to that amount, then that amount might be too high.
ah, I understand,
Yeah.
thank you.
Uh-huh.
And then the flip is true.
And the flip
If a
is
lot
true.
of people gave at that level,
Then you need to up it.
increase it.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. You're talking about individual donors?
Yes. So the traditional 4 steps of major gift: identification, cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship. It's very, very comparable and similar to the cause selling cycle. As you can see, with phase 1 in cause selling, you have the prospecting and pre-approach. And then major gifts, prospecting and pre-approach, and then cultivation, approach, and needs discovery, and solicitation, and stewardship. And what you can see in all of these is like there's not one that's bigger or more of an emphasis than another. You're giving the same amount of attention to the detail throughout the process. 3 stages of preparation. What is the ask? This is from your pre-approach work. You should already know information about your prospect, the gift amount, what their purpose, what their why is, and how it benefits. How will this gift make a difference, and how will success be measured? Again, that measurement component is so important because it really does, connect to that impact. And what objections might you encounter? And all of those things that we've worked on with your tools and figuring out how to get those responses and those responses that you have for any potential objection. I mean, I think a lot of you have so many conversations and so much experience that you can prepare for what individuals might say. And so being prepared for whatever might come your way, I mean, it just shows how confident you are in your own mission and how confident you are with making this relationship and ultimately the ask. So plan your stewardship. This is not something just naturally happens. You need to be very strategic, as we can see throughout this, which is going to help you, especially smaller organizations, really be efficient with their time. Who's going to be who's following up? When will they follow up? And how will they follow up? And the how, again, is very personal to the donor. Some, as we've talked about before, want to be anonymous and they don't want a lot of the limelight. That's probably rare. But I think understanding what speaks to that donor and how you can connect them to your organization in a way where they keep giving and wanting to be engaged. Use the gift chart, which I'm sure many of you do. And this is something that is, again, very dynamic, and it's going to change. If you've, got to the point where you got to an ask and the answer was no, then this needs to be reevaluated and understanding, like, okay, if that gift didn't happen, then where else do I need to put this? So that ultimately, by whatever timeline that you have, your organization has to receive a certain amount of funding, that you're staying in within that timeline so you can keep moving forward. And that's what all the tools and the spreadsheets and things that, Sal and I've developed that will really help you, graph all of that out and stay on point. So I think, again, determining what a major gift is for your personal organization. Use the cost-selling cycle in conjunction with the major gift cycles. It's very comparable. They work together. And careful planning leads to stronger major gifts, gifts asked, and results. Any questions on major gifts? No? All right. Okay, guys, take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to have our wonderful speaker. So be prompt, please.
And what additional data you want to capture? Yeah, not a problem.
Well, hello.
No, Kareem. How are you doing?
Kiss the ring.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, I got to see you this morning. started coming in. He's like, so I wonder who our guest speaker is going to be today.
I told her a few weeks ago, I was like, I'm surprised by your host.
Yeah, when I saw him, I was like,
Because out in that class, it's downtown Charleston, we're gonna have.
right.
So I'm gonna bring you up again, so I said, so this I So I wanted to tell you, so the other day you asked, you mentioned something about and I said, next time I see you, I'm going to say, that's what about the, because I said, what is the program? Remember I said that? Okay, the truth is, I'm not. But the reason I'm taking this is
He went to a conference. Yeah, he's having a whole bunch of fun in Vegas right now.
I want to learn how to write grants.
Yep, he's showing. He's showing.
Not only James, but Cassie and I. So, I used to yeah. So I said next time I see you, so it's like a leadership conference on Thursday. Yes, I wanted to let you know. So that's kind of been helping me pass it, you know, how I know it's different. I think that I spent
If it doesn't make the actual calendar, it doesn't get done. Because it reminds me. I'm ready to take notes.
Alright, so, okay, so I told you about this is my dilemma. So now I'm trying to get out of time. I'm not trying to get out of 6 Yes, I'm with them. I need to see that focus on that. You know, like when I see them Please do. How about your average? So, it's not as coming. Everybody told you're going to see me in some capacity. So I was like, if you see me here, he's going to say, Right? That's what I was saying to you. Everyone should give you more than that number is going to work, right?
I'm serious. I do what everybody else. Sometimes I gotta be official. Thank you very much.
All right. We're super excited. Hello, everybody. We're gonna get started. We're super excited to have our next speaker, and in order to do it justice, we're gonna have Nina here give a nice welcome and introduction.
Hello, Cohort. Hello.
This is her pitch practice.
Right. I was just about to ask you about that. I really was. Like, doesn't this attribute or account for my pitch? Does it count just a little bit? Well, hello, everyone. I bring you greetings on behalf of the Urban League of Broward County. All the Urban League representatives in the class, can I see your hands wave and make some noise? I know we have been loud and boisterous over the last 7 weeks. But I have the extreme pleasure and privilege of introducing my Vice President of Philanthropy and Communications at the Urban League of Broward County, Ms. Alika Brown. She is charged with leading our Philanthropy and Communications Department. She has been with the Urban League for well over 12 years. She has built an extensive career in marketing and philanthropy, and in fact, she, for me on a personal note, has helped to garner and teach and install those tools of fundraising, although with sales and marrying the corporate life with the nonprofit life. So I attribute that to her. On a personal note, she also serves directly with leading the charge for our department with our CEO, working jointly with our CEO and our board of directors. And a very impressive statistic for her, she has generated corporate partnerships, long-term relationship corporate partnerships, and garnered well over $1 million in sponsorship for the Urban League of Broward County.
Dropping the bucket from your career.
Just for the record, when I go to ask for money, Alika just left.
Thank you
So you need to just go to her house first.
First stop on the way. In fact, in 2015, the Urban League of Broward County hosted one of the National Urban League's largest conferences here in Fort Lauderdale, and Alika Brown led the charge with securing our philanthropy stakeholders and marketing in the market. And to date, on record, we've been asked numerous times to bring the conference back to Broward County, as a matter of fact. And that's all up to my CEO, Alika Brown. But without any further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to give her a warm welcome and round of applause, if you will, Ms. Alika Brown, Senior Vice President of Philanthropy and Communications at the Urban League of Broward County.
Oh my goodness. I think that made me nervous.
I don't know if I deserve all of that, but that's great. Thank you so much for welcoming me. That was a very warm welcome. I appreciate it. And normally I'd be sitting exactly where you're sitting and really soaking up all this educational goodness. And so unfortunately I wasn't able to because I had a few schedule conflicts. And so I spoke with Chase at the start of this class, and I said, you know what, Chase, I'm gonna miss a few. How many can I miss? He was like, not that many, but you can actually come and lead a presentation. I was like, okay, Chase, sure. So I was voluntold to be here by Chase. I'm definitely honoring that commitment to him and to you all today. What I'm gonna be talking about is something that's near and dear to my heart, and you kind of touched on it earlier in the earlier presentation, donor stewardship and donor relationships, really about retaining your donors in your organization. So we're gonna jump right in. Nina kind of stole my thunder. I was going to tell you a little bit about myself, but I will. So I'm originally from New York, but I grew up here in sunny South Florida. I got my bachelor's degree in marketing from UCF, so go Knights. And I'm also a graduate of Nova Southeastern University's MBA program, so go Sharks, the Nova Southeastern University. I have held various positions at the Urban League for the past 12 years, and very happy that I'm still learning and growing every single day. During my tenure at the Urban League, I actually founded my own branding and graphic design firm to help aid small businesses and nonprofits and faith-based institutions develop their own brand identity. So in today's Hot Topics, full disclosure moment, I had an elaborate plan to plan a nice little icebreaker for you all. But as luck would have it, I had a small little car accident last night. Oh. I'm okay. My car, however, I call her Lexi, is not. So Lexi is a little bruised right now. So there is no icebreaker, but hopefully there's a lot of cool nuggets that you can take that's fun and entertaining enough for you to bring back to your office. So in today's Hot Topics, we'll be talking about Donor Relations 101, the donor stewardship process, donor engagement planning, and I'm going to leave you with some cool tools and resources that you can take back to your own offices. And then we'll leave some time for Q&A. Cool? Yes, yes? Cool. Yes, yes. Yes, yes. Jumping right in. So donor relations and donor stewardship are terms that are often used interchangeably, but there is a slight difference. So donor relations actually talks about the relationship building process with the donor. How are you actually growing this relationship and deepening this relationship with your donor? While donor stewardship is really focused on honoring the donor's gifts and intentions. So we'll break down what that looks like. So we talked a little bit about the giving cycle, but this is actually the stewardship process. So step one, when the donor gives you a gift to your organization, you immediately thank them for that gift. And that gift, the thank you really should be instant. And so what I tend to do, a little tip from me, is that I'll always send a quick little email. Hello, donor A, we just received your gift. You'll receive a formal letter from our organization, but we want to let you know that we received it and we appreciate you for supporting our mission. Excuse me. And then the next step is to confirm the donor's gifts, intentions, and the expectations of that gift. So one of the things that we do at the Urban League is we build out what's called a relationship plan. And it's actually like an informal contract that you create between your donor and your organization that says these are the different ways that we plan to steward your gift throughout the year. And be very specific in that. Once you create the donor, the relationship plan, the stewardship plan, then of course you want to recognize the donor. So in the building of that relationship plan, you want to identify the ways in which they want to be recognized, right? And so the professor just actually touched on that. They might want a personalized letter. They may not want to be anonymous and not be recognized at all. They may want a press release and a big, huge, launch party for this new program that they just installed at your organization. So when you're talking about that relationship with the donor, when you're talking about the way that they want to be recognized in the community, make sure that you hone on those different opportunities that your organization can provide to that donor. It could be on social media, it could be a posting on your website, it can be a formal press release, it can be an actual check presentation, and again, it could be a launch party. So it really all depends on what their desires are. And then of course, you want to report the gift's impact to the donor. And so what we started doing at the Urban League is we actually, in addition to doing an annual report that everyone does at the end of the year, we started creating these customized ROI reports, return on investment reports, that really hones in on their direct gift and how their direct gift
has made an impact on your organization. And so if they are a donor who's donating to your health program, how many people did you serve in that health program? How many people were really impacted by the gift that that donor actually gave to your organization? You can be as even specific to say, we engage your associates in the following events throughout the entire year. These are the ways that we highlighted your investment on social, exactly, you got the annual report, thank you.
Wonderful, Claire.
These are the ways that we highlighted the impact of your investment on all of our social media channels. And so you're really talking about the way that you focused on their specific investment in your organization. And then, of course, it's time to begin the cultivation process again for the next gift. So your idea or the focus really should be retaining that donor. Don't let them leave your organization. On average, 60 to 70% of donors who make a first-time gift do not make a second-time gift. And 53% of donors that leave your organization do so because of ineffective donor communications. So make sure you're constantly touching, we call them touches at the Urban League, constantly touching and checking in on your donors and corporate partners.
Can you repeat the statistic on
Sure.
the second gift?
The second gift,
Yes.
60 to 70% of donors do not make a second gift in your organization. 60 to 70% on average.
Wow.
First-time donors. So you want to make sure you are in constant communication with your donors. Okay? So how do you do that? You build a wham bam donor engagement plan. So I'm going to give you a few hot tips that we actually use at the Urban League to make sure that your donors really feel connected to you and to your mission. Personal invitations. Kareem, you know this well. I see you at almost every event. Leverage leverage opportunities that your agency might receive to really cultivate and steward new relationships with your donors. So if you receive, for example, a table of 10, or if you decide to purchase a table of 10 as an organization to an event, this is a great opportunity for you to network with your new donors and to also invite your current donors. So we came up with a little formula at the Urban League. So we have, if there's a table of 10, for example, we have a mix of staff and volunteers or members of our YPN networks engaging with a board member of the organization, as well as a new prospect or a current donor. So you have a nice little makeup of folks who currently support you and folks who you want to actually support your mission, engaging with folks who are already invested in your mission. Right? Yes, yes?
Yes.
Personal favorite of mine, articles of interest. So follow your donors on social media and monitor their headlines. You're going to be doing a little cyber stalking, but it's cyber stalking for social good. So follow your donors and all of their engagement online. Here's a great example. Third Federal is a partner of ours, and they just happened to have Third Federal Day. They were celebrating 81 years of service, 81 years in business. And as soon as we saw that post on their Facebook page, took a screenshot, sent them to our personal contacts, our personal donors at Third Federal to say, congratulations on your 81 years of service. It costs nothing to do that. They want to make sure, or actually you want to make sure that you are still top of mind for them. They want to make sure that what they care about is something that you also care about too. So it's really about relationship building. It's just like your personal relationships. You have a friend who's having a birthday coming up, you naturally say happy birthday. It's the same thing with your relationships, okay? Oh, another little tip about this. So to follow those articles of interest, Google alerts. So if you don't already have them set up for your organization to monitor or get a notification every time there is a mention of your name, do the same thing for your corporate partners. Do the same thing for your donors. Set up Google alerts on all of the organizations that support, or excuse me, all of the companies that support your organization, so that when there's something interesting in the headline, if they have made the best company to work for this year, Fortune 500, or if there is a new leader at that organization, you want to be the first to say congratulations and kudos. You want to engage your CEO or your board chair to send personal thank you notes as well to that organization, or personal acknowledgement letters to that organization as well. Donor spotlights. We do this well. Everyone has heard of the infamous e-blast, right? And so one of the things that we did was we got a little bit creative this year under the brilliant creative direction of Miss Nina McDowell here. And we sent personalized donor spotlights to profile new donors who made a recent investment to the Urban League and helped launch programs. And so for Valentine's Day, we were just showing our love. Here's our love to you, and thank you for helping to advance our mission. Something very simple, as I said, and cost effective. It costs you nothing to say this to people. We appreciate you, and we say that often. So I took a screenshot of that, sent that to all of the donors who were listed and mentioned in the article, and sent them a personal note from me to them. Personalized gifts. Someone will recognize this as well. No one wants a diamond-encrusted mug with your logo on it at holiday time. So, get creative with your personal gifts as well. When you're acknowledging your donors at the end of the year, you can send them holiday cards. You can also send personalized gifts that are made from the heart under the creative, artistic direction of Alquavia Brown. Our students actually created artwork, personalized artwork. We put them in frames and we sent them with a personal note to our donors, and they loved them. So again, it doesn't have to break the bank. Donors also want to make sure that you are great stewards of the dollars that they're giving you, so don't go blowing the budget in giving them these elaborate gifts. Do something that is very thoughtful and very personalized to them. Volunteer opportunities. This goes without saying. Give opportunities to your donors and to your corporate partners to get their associates involved in supporting your mission. They also want to have their associates connected to the organizations that they support financially. So find ways to include their associates in everything that you do at any given time. If you have a summer camp program and you need volunteers, this is an opportunity to send those volunteer opportunities to that company and say, we're actually looking for volunteers to help with our summer program, and get them engaged that way. Naming rights. People really think about naming rights in terms of bricks and mortar and capital campaigns. Your logo or your name doesn't necessarily have to be on a building for you to be able to use that brand recognition for them. So one of the things that we did was when we had a generous donation of laptops given to the Urban League, about 30 to 50 laptops, we actually got a laptop cart and put the branding on that laptop cart. So anytime that we move it in any room, they're getting that visibility as well. So it doesn't have to be something that's installed on a wall or listed anywhere in your building like that, but you can really find creative ways to do that. We also do our own kind of Dress for Success boutique at the Urban League for job seekers, and we do have a donor who has donated hundreds of articles of clothing collected from associates across the Wells Fargo network. And so this is a great opportunity for us to rename the Wells Fargo, Dress for Success, or the Wells Fargo Career Closet, after them. Great way to show your appreciation, because they're getting their associates involved. They're donating professional attire for your job seekers, and so you want to be able to show that impact. And again, so some cool tools and resources. Like I said, Google Alerts. If you're not using them already for your organization, go online and do it now. That's a free resource for you. Make sure that your top corporate partners or your top donors are also in that Google Alert list, so that you can track all of the engagements that they have in the media as well and send them notes, based on that. Classy is a nonprofit resource, which I really love. It really has great content regarding nonprofit news, updates, articles that are of interest. So that's definitely an organization that you guys want to take a look at. Canva is another free resource. So if you're not already using this, we use this quite a bit at the Urban League. It is a resource that allows you to do graphic design, and it has pre-designed templates for anything that you want. Newsletters, holiday cards, presentations, you name it. And it's a free resource. So if you're not using that as well, really quick and easy to do, and it actually has an app form. I'm a podcast queen. I love a good podcast. And so I'm leaving with you two podcasts that I really, really like. SG Engage and Nonprofit Radio, which is a radio there. And that is it. I think I did that in like 10 minutes.
I know.
Nonprofit Radio. So SG Engage and Nonprofit Radio. Yes.
Do you ever, so you talked about turning your donors into, or giving your donor companies team volunteer opportunities. Do you, what is your policy on the other way around? Because we have corporations who have been coming and doing the team building through volunteering at our property, and I have yet to get to the decision maker who will write us a check. We haven't gotten any money from them yet.
Okay.
So I know some organizations have policies that you have to give monetarily to be able to have those team building volunteer opportunities. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm not really a fan of the give to get. I think it really all depends on what the donor really desires to do. If they want to be engaged with you, if they want to get to know you first, you gotta think about it like dating in a relationship, they're testing you out. You know what I mean? They really want to see what your mission is all about, and they want to see it up front and up close. So allow them, maybe in a limited capacity, to really engage with your organization. You know, give them an opportunity to lead a talk, to do a presentation, you know, to some of your clients, or even to do a presentation to your staff, and really allow them to really absorb your mission and really see it up front and engage with you in a way that allows them to feel comfortable taking it to the next level. So again, it's really about building that relationship. It doesn't happen instantly. I can tell you, I've had donors I've been working on for a year or 2 years, and then the gift comes after that. So on average, a major gift is really it takes about 18 months to really cultivate a major gift from someone.
Okay.
So you really have to be patient. It is the long game that you're
I was
playing.
starting to get impatient, and and I've been hearing others that don't do it that way, but we have several big name companies that are giving of their staff members time, but not,
Right.
so I'll be patient then.
Be patient, but also be strategic.
Yes,
it really
right.
all depends on what's most interesting to them, what they're really looking for. So, and sometimes it's all about who you talk to as well.
And that's it, there's gatekeepers who aren't letting me get to the right people, and the people who are coming and volunteering, I mean, they're great and all, but they're not the ones who are doing the philanthropic kind
Right.
of give.
But if you're building the relationship with who is there,
Yeah.
they will
They
help you
become our
with the gate.
champions.
Exactly, they will help you with that gatekeeper.
And they haven't yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, your volunteers are your silent ambassadors. So don't discount them because they
Yeah.
still have that connection
Right.
to your organization. So
Right.
they'll be able to open those doors for you that you think that you're not able to do at the moment yet.
Thank
so,
you.
yeah. Yes.
One thing it works for my personal life, but also applies to professional life as well, is sharing the information of what it is that the organization needs. So this came about with public service loan forgiveness and the income-based payments. And when I was working at UM, I was in a program about tuition remission. So when they were calculating how much I would owe,